We are live.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the July 7th work session of the East Hampton Town Board. Carol, would you please read the roll call?
Councilwoman Brett Gonzalez.
Present.
Councilman Lease.
Present.
Councilwoman Overby.
Here.
Councilman Bragman.
Here.
Supervisor Van Scoyac.
President, please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Today we have 4 topics for discussion on the work session agenda. We'll have the Chief of Police, Mike Sarlo, will be giving a presentation on the weekend review. Community Development and Block Grants by Tom Rule. Plover Stewardship Report by Kim Shaw and Samantha Klein. And we have the Town Recreation Department Programs presentation by John Rooney and David Lease, followed by Liaison Reports and Resolutions. I wanted to give a brief update as to where we stand with COVID-19. And we'll also have, following that update, the public portion where any member of the public may call. The number's on the screen, and you can call in and let us know what your thoughts are or questions. We look forward to hearing from you. So as of July 5th, the numbers continue to be flattened out. County-wide, there were only 43 new positive cases out of a population of nearly 1.5 million people. The hospitalizations county-wide are down to 57. I understand from Robert Ross, who's at the Southampton Hospital, that as of yesterday, they only had 1 COVID positive case in our hospital. This is great news. It's a trend that continues forward. And beginning tomorrow, we will reach phase 4 of reopening. We're still on track for that. We had an extremely busy 4th of July weekend, which is the case every 4th of July. Certainly this is summer like no other, and with all the precautions that local businesses are taking and mask wearing by the general public, we need to remain vigilant to prevent the spread of the disease. We had very good compliance overall. I would say that the vast majority of businesses take very seriously these protocols. They understand that it's important to the safety of themselves, their patrons, and their employees. And by not following the protocols, people will not have the comfort level to visit those types of businesses. However, there's always a few outliers. And unfortunately, this weekend, we had to enforce upon 3 establishments in Montauk, which resulted in arrests of business owners or managers for the violations that were on site. There were very large gatherings and flagrant, I think, flaunting of the safety protocols that we've all been trying to live by in order to prevent the spread of the disease. Those businesses have been referred to the State Liquor Authority for review. And I'm asking the State Liquor Authority to suspend the licenses of businesses that continue to flagrantly violate the rules and regulations. Again, this is a very few number of businesses. The vast majority of businesses, again, are operating well within the protocols, and everyone's trying to do their best here. But we can't allow ourselves to become complacent. We can't allow for the outright flaunting of these regulations. They're here for public safety. We want to have the best possible summer we can, and that's going to be reliant upon everybody following those basic rules of wearing your masks when you're in public. Be patient about the number of people that are here. Try to give each other space and be respectful of our town. We find that on a big summer weekend like this, that the amount of trash generated by the crowds gets to be quite large. We do our best to have additional pickups of that garbage, but we also experience individuals who are not responsible in terms of how they dispose of their garbage, dropping it on the streets and whatnot. And that's a cause for concern. And I know that our local citizens are upset by that. We will do our best to do cleanings of the downtown areas and any other place that experiences such litter. But again, we ask for everybody's patience as we move forward. At this point, we've had very good compliance, I think, on the beaches as well. That's running pretty smoothly. Again, this is probably the the busiest weekend that we may have all summer. And I think we made it through pretty well, but we'll get an update on the chief. There was an extremely high call volume for the PD this weekend, as one would expect for 4th of July weekend, but I'll let him give the update on that. At this point, what I'd like to do is to move on to the public portion, where any member of the public may call in with questions or comments for the board. Michael, do we have any callers in queue?
Yes, there are currently 2 callers on hold. I will unmute the first caller right now.
Great, thank you.
Caller, you're live with the town board. Could you state your name, please?
Yeah, my name's Ken Hicks. My wife Ann is here also. Our question relates to non-resident beach permits for parking. We have a rental scheduled for after Labor Day, and in Montauk for 15 days. And we're wondering if you're considering issuing permits for the after Labor Day period, because our time when we can cancel is coming up, and if we can't park at Gin Beach and Ditch Plains, we probably will cancel. Thank you.
Right. Ken, thanks for calling in. And, we have received a number of calls and questions regarding the issuance of non-resident permits. Currently, we are under a 50% occupancy rule by the governor's executive order. And so until that's lifted, I don't expect to be issuing non-resident permits. However, post-Labor Day, I think the volume certainly drops off. And I would suspect that by that point, we will be in a position to issue those non-resident permits. It's impossible to foresee the future at this point. Hopefully we don't have a resurgence here. But again, I would expect that we'd be able to do that by Labor Day.
So
hope that's helpful.
Just a follow-up. So essentially, we would have to wait until Labor Day to find out?
I can't predict when those restrictions would be lifted, but I would think by Labor Day, with the summer season coming to a close and people, going back to their homes, their year-round homes, and kids going back to school, that we won't be up against an occupancy limit that will be so constraining. So I think it's likely. I can't obviously promise, what will happen in the future, but I think it's quite likely by Labor Day we'll be relaxing that, if not sooner. We're still making very good progress. We reach phase 4 tomorrow, and while I've been asking the governor's office to give us additional guidance as to when they think they might lift the beach occupancy restrictions, I haven't gotten any definitive answer yet back. So I think it's probably coming. It's forthcoming, but I can't predict when that announcement will be made. I'm sorry, I can't.
Back in August? Yeah.
Yeah, please feel free to check back.
Okay.
Feel free to check back with us. Yes, thank you for calling. Enjoy your stay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Michael, do we have another caller on the line?
Yes, we do. Unmuting them as we speak. Caller, you're live with the town board.
Hey
Can you
there.
state your name?
Yep, my name's Alex Verzan. I've actually been so kind to have spoken to David a little bit in the past. Similar question as the last caller. I live up here for 6 months of the year. Family home, obviously, so my name is not on the deed of that house. And certainly limited with any type of family passes. Obviously, non-resident straight up non-resident passes, but my bigger question is really for non-resident 4x4 passes. In the future, if you guys would consider making some special considerations for fishermen or surfers that do utilize the 4x4, since there is a smaller group of us, and if not, if the family passes will be reconsidered. I certainly understand the occupancy thing here, but there is a population of people who actually live up here half the year, for lack of a better word, you know, us reverse snowbirds, or and we're a little bit limited, and just curious to see if there was any evolution on that.
Yeah, so again, you know, we're waiting to hear from the governor about the lifting of the 50% occupancy regulations, restrictions. You know, at that time, we'll consider non-resident beach driving permits as well as the non-resident parking permits. And if you are in the position where you have a family home, you are eligible for that family permit, which we are issuing. You just need to prove your immediate relationship to the property owner.
So I had called in that might have just changed. I called in 2 weeks ago about the family. They said they were not issuing them. I have birth certificates and all that kind of stuff ready to go. How would I just make that application easy, and I'll do that today?
Alex, what I'll do is I'll email you specifically how to do that as far as the family non-resident permits, the process for that.
Okay.
I'll send you an email right now to you, Alex.
Yeah, and we just removed that restriction as of I believe it was this past
Monday.
A week ago Monday.
Okay,
so
that's awesome.
You will be able to do that. And again, just for anyone listening, the family non-resident permit is you're eligible for that if you are an immediate relation to the property owner. And I believe it's $100 for the season family non-resident permit. So again, you have to prove that you're an immediate family member. Alex, thanks for calling.
That's great news. Thank you for having me. Have a great day, guys.
You too. Be well. Michael, do we have any other callers on the line?
Yes, we do. I'm unmuting the next caller right now. Hello, caller. You're live with the East Hampton Town Board.
Thank you. Good morning, Supervisor and Town Council. This is David Buddha. How are you?
Well, David, how are you doing?
Good. I wanted to bring up something that was covered by a resolution at the last Thursday meeting, and I see that Tom Rule is on today's agenda, and perhaps he can also give some input to the answer that I seek. One of the things that you did last Thursday was you voted to repurchase one of the Whalebone Woods affordable homes, which had been established in the mid 80s or late 80s as under affordable housing program, where the town either gifted the land or built houses. There are a whole bunch of different schemes, but the properties became owned by the individuals, but subject to the town's right to recapture 60% of the land. It was my understanding that the last several opportunities the town evaluated, where you had the right of repurchase, you determined that the houses were really too pricey and no longer affordable, and made no sense to keep them in the single-family affordable housing program, and instead let them go into the market and then recouped your money. And I assume that any money that you recoup from these houses you can better use to create rental affordable housing, which really makes more sense to me. I find it hard to understand how the town can be involved in providing affordable housing in single-family houses that have a value between $750,000 and $1 million. I think that there are a lot of these Whalebone Woods and Whalebone Woods North houses that are now coming up for sale because of the age of them and the age of the occupants. And the town really needs to evaluate what's the best way to spend your affordable housing dollars. I think it should be only towards rental affordable housing, and that maybe you should allow more of these houses to go back to the private sector, collect full taxes, and move on in a better and a new direction. So I'd appreciate any comments either from Councilwoman Overby, who sponsored this, or Mr. Rule, if he's available. I think you should take a long, hard look at the future of the single-family affordable housing program.
Yeah, David, I'm sorry you didn't mention me that you wanted to hear from me.
Well, whoever is, you can flip a coin. Anyone can go first.
Well,
So I think, Tom did communicate with the entire town board about the options that we could have for this particular piece of property. And at the end of the day, it appeared as though the house could be sold for just under $400,000 to someone who could qualify in affordable housing. And, that it was like 300, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't have it in front of me, 393,000, I think would be the eventual sale price of the piece of property. It might've been a little bit less. And we thought that as a town board that was appropriate for someone to come in and be able, under the affordable housing rules, to be able to purchase that. So that was, one of the reasons that we went ahead and had that resolution presented and voted on by the town board last Thursday. So, Tom, I don't know if you have the resolution.
I just wanted to point out it's a little confusing reading these resolutions. It looks like, of course, you would be giving up your 60% interest in the property. The money that you would have received is going back into this process. But the resolution also speaks in terms of investing an additional $118,000, which I assume would be for improvements, so that the town's investment here is quite substantial. And I don't know how much you're going to recoup by way of the 99-year lease.
No, the 120, the investment that the town is making is it's going from a 60% interest in the property to a 100% interest in the property, which enables it to be converted to a 99-year land lease, which enables us to cap the appreciation. So what the town is basically getting is a $750,000 house, or roughly, for $120,000, and recouping the balance from two sources. One is its already existing recapture, and the other is the eventual sales price. And while that price may seem high, I'm not sure you're going to find too many houses in East Hampton that are in very, very good condition, which this house is, for
$394,000. $393.
So what we are doing is we are capping the future appreciation on this house, investing in the land, owning 100% of the land. And quite frankly, that's cheaper than buying a lot and building a house on it, because the lot's going to cost us more than $120,000. So now, it isn't a one or the other, because the town is investing in a lot of money in property that it intends to build rental housing on, or, as in Amagansett, is currently building rental housing. So it's not either or. It's a broad mix of types of housing, and this is an opportunity to have a house, which, albeit, will be at a slightly higher income group, but is nothing comparable found in East Hampton, and it will remain even more affordable than it is now. So
David, essentially the way the numbers work out in this, and the reason we've passed in the past on these repurchases is that because the numbers didn't really work out, it looks to us that we can invest in what would be the other 40% of the land value, which is about $140,000. The town would normally recoup $211,000. So you subtract that from the sale price, and essentially, we think that we can resell this for $393,000 to someone with a moderate income, and keep that property in the affordable program, as Tom said, with the 99-year land lease. So this is an opportunity that we saw that we could put another single family home out for the affordable housing program. But as Tom also said, we understand that, single family homes are becoming more and more difficult to provide in an affordable housing program. We are having to shift really our focus to rental for any kind of new developments, rental or condominium type of situations like the Manor House project.
That's all well and good. I appreciate that. Maybe the resolution is confusing because there are two numbers that the town is supposedly investing. The $140,800 I understood. There's another number of $118,450, which I thought was going to be for improvements, because I know in at least one case the town invested over $100,000 in improving a house that was going to be resold. So I'm not sure why the resolution was drafted that way. Maybe it was an error. Maybe I'm confused, but I see them both there.
Well, this house doesn't need any repairs, so we're not investing anything into this house. In the past, we have invested funds from a federal program that renovates homes in one of our affordable housing units to make it more habitable. Obviously, the cheapest houses for us to rebuy back are sometimes in suboptimal condition, and the better the house is, the higher it appraises for. But this one will not need work.
Okay, all right. Then there's someone should take a closer look at that resolution because it's a little confusing. But I appreciate the answers that I got, and have a great day.
Great. Thanks, David. It's nice to hear from you. Michael, do we have any other callers on the line?
There are currently no callers on the line.
Okay, I'd like to move on then. We have our Chief of Police, Mike Sarlo, who really has been doing an outstanding job through this whole pandemic crisis. And I just want to take the opportunity to thank you and your department for all your hard work through what have been extremely challenging times between pandemic and the protests, Black Lives Matter, and the murder of George Floyd, and all the heightened scrutiny of our police departments nationwide. I would just want to say that the chief's always been very proactive in community policing and has worked very closely with our Latino community as well. And I've been really proud of the response that Councilwoman Overby and I got out in Montauk some months ago when we met with 50 or 60 people within the Latino community, and they expressed that they were very comfortable with our police department, that they felt that they built personal relationships with the officers on the beat, and they had great confidence and felt safe and protected by them, which was really nice to hear. Obviously, we will continue to be vigilant about making sure that we have the very best protocols and procedures in place to protect the public. So without any further ado, the chief's here to give us an update on the weekend. So Chief, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate the feedback, Peter. Obviously it's been very challenging times. Our officers are working under very difficult conditions, and we're doing the best we can to handle everything that's on our plate right now. This weekend on across the board was one of the busiest 4th of July weekends we've ever had. I think with reopen New York being in phase 3 and very good weather and a holiday weekend, I think people were just really looking to get out and about, and it created quite a few challenges for us. We had between 10 and 18 officers on duty, depending on time of day, throughout the weekend. 6 to 8 Marine Patrol officers on duty throughout the weekend, and fire marshals and code and our TCOs were all out in full force as well. Our normal daily emergency and calls for service response is always our first priority, And we had almost 450 calls for service between Friday morning and Monday morning. 120 of those during the overnight on Saturday night, July 4th. Extremely, extremely busy call volume. Lots of calls in reference to fireworks, residential noise complaints, traffic accidents, everything we normally would respond to that requires at least one, sometimes two officers to respond and take a report and investigate and handle. Most calls take, with response time and actually handling the call, you're looking anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes to actually handle the call adequately. And when you look at that volume of calls with the numbers of officers we had, we were obviously spread very thin for most of the weekend. We also tried to be as proactive in seeking compliance and monitoring the essential businesses as we possibly could be. Obviously, right now, we are most focused on the large gathering points and the businesses that can host the most people. So given the phase 3 restrictions with 50% indoor seating and the spacing required for outdoor seating, along with the requirements that all patrons be seated when served and that masks be worn when moving in and around any of these properties, and that employees wear masks, and that any alcohol that's still allowed to be served to go under the governor's order must be served with takeout food orders. Those are the main areas that we're focusing on to try to gain compliance, because we see those as the highest risk areas for the public, where enclosed dining spaces and large crowds and people passing each other create the highest risk of spread. So that's where we've really been trying to focus our efforts and our attentions in gaining compliance with those businesses. We are happy to report there are many, many, many very responsible and hardworking restaurant and business owners that are doing everything they can to provide a safe atmosphere and help their customers feel as comfortable as they can on property. A lot of signage, a lot of communication, kind of going above and beyond with markers on the grounds and spacing their tables out. Across the board, much more compliance than not. There are several establishments that seem to be large gathering points and tend to have bigger crowds. Some of their focus of their business is more towards just alcohol service and not food, as much as some of the other businesses. So they obviously, due to their physical layouts and the way they do their normal business, create more challenges for us. We did go out and visit a number of those businesses during the day, and we monitored a couple of those businesses during the day. And then at night, we had a specialized team go around and really look for SLA violations and COVID violations. We do this every year, 3 or 4 times a summer anyway, on a weekend night. So we felt this was the appropriate time to at least to try to do that. We cited 3 different businesses, their managers or owners, for some minor violations of the SLA codes. They're unclassified misdemeanors under the Alcohol Beverage Control Law. And but also, while doing those inspections and in doing follow-up investigations of some of those locations, we noticed and observed several COVID violations, and we were also shared from the public some video and photographic evidence, which we have forwarded to the State Liquor Authority. Our goal throughout this has been very proactive, communicating with the businesses, helping them understand what it is they need to do, use the businesses that are doing it right as a model for the others to copy, and see what staffing they need, what signage they need, and how to go about doing this right. And there's just a handful of businesses, it seems, that are willing to take some more risk than others. And we will defer to the State Liquor Authority at this time and work with them to see what further actions we can take moving forward under the public health law and the SLA law. Overall, working extremely hard along with Marine Patrol and the lifeguards. I really want to tip my hat to Johnny Ryan and the entire lifeguard crew for how hard they've worked to promote mask wearing on and off the beach, to promote distancing on the beach. They had drones up this weekend reviewing the capacity. They had actually lifeguards walking around with poles to try to make sure that people who weren't grouped together were spaced out adequately. We monitored the parking. We actually had to close Atlantic Avenue for a little while. It had reached capacity. There was not much parking left, and they needed to spread people out on the beach. We did that for about an hour, hour and a half, and as people left and moved spread out, we were able to reopen that. A lot of very comprehensive coordinated work with Parks and Recreation on making sure the bathrooms are cleaned, and their staff are helping make sure people wear masks in and around those locations. We've gotten a lot of thanks and appreciation from many members of the community for those efforts. And, it's definitely a collaborative across the board approach, and it's very, very challenging, especially now with warmer weather and bigger crowds and more people around. Extremely challenging times. Like I said, we've communicated with Albany. We've sought some guidance and some further restrictions on the alcohol to go and the service of alcohol without food. We appreciate the idea that the businesses need to function and that they have a short window, but the way some of these businesses are set up and their lack of ability to control crowding and spacing on property causes a lot of issues that we feel could be handled by cutting off alcohol sales at midnight or stopping the alcohol to go. Certain things that would create a much better condition for us to be able to manage. So a tremendous amount of overtime was expended. We handled call after call after call, and we're working through this week to communicate with the state and set a game plan moving forward. As Peter said earlier, we hope that this is the busiest weekend of the summer and that things will even themselves out a little bit as we move forward. And, we'll continue to work with all of our shareholders and the members of the community and the business owners to make sure that we're trying to gain compliance and stay safe for everybody.
Board members have any questions for the chief?
So Chief, I have one. This came out of the Montauk CAC yesterday, and I'll, talk about it again in my liaison report. They're concerned about share houses that they see where there were, up to 17 cars in front of certain houses. And so they were asking, how is the town going to handle that, that influx, it seems, of share houses going on? Or do you still feel that that's just a 4th of July weekend event, or do you think that's something that's going to continue?
We'll have to continue to monitor that. I know what a lot of the feedback we've gotten and working with code enforcement and communicating with some members of the public who filed some of those complaints. Some of these seem to be just come out and party for the weekend, not necessarily that it's actually 17 people, 17 cars staying at that house, but people coming out for a party. It's very challenging, to regulate some of those issues that happen on private property. We handle those complaints based on whether there's a party going on, whether there's excessive, music, and the parking issues. And we refer those back to code enforcement in their area expertise to investigate the turnover or the excessive people in a share house. And we continue to monitor those as we've always done. I know they use some online research. They try to leave no stone unturned in holding those people accountable for those locations. Whether this was just a grouping of a lot of parties for the weekend, being the holiday, or a longer term issue we see for the summer remains to be seen. And we'll start to get a feel for that as we head into this weekend, and some of the same locations, if they have some of the same issues, or if things start to balance themselves out a little bit and calm themselves down now that it's not 4th of July. We'll have to evaluate that as we go. I really don't have a good feel for it yet.
And I think the message to the general public is to contact ordinance enforcement if you have a location in your neighborhood that you're seeing, these types of problems. If you think there's excessive occupancy, overcrowding for a share house or something like that, if you report that to us, the ordinance enforcement department, that can be followed up on. It's really important to try and document those situations as early in the season as possible, because it does take repeated investigation and showing up on site to build a case for illegal rental. It's not something you can just solve with one visit. It takes at least 3 visits to take care of that. So
so we did talk about that, and I will say that the thing that works the best for this were, filing the complaint forms online with code enforcement, and right. That several people got responses right away. And so, I'm just going to say that instead of calling the non-emergency police number, have them do the code enforcement that can, in real time, gets to the code enforcement officer. So just for everyone out there that has a complaint, residential complaint, that might be helpful. A lot of them were noise complaints.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
And if one person was very concerned about health and safety issues, that many people in a location packed tight together without, obviously, they felt they were not wearing masks as they heard the party. But, so again, I think our focus as a town board is health and safety issues. And as, a police department, municipality, all of us are concerned about health and safety issues and keeping the numbers of COVID down and making it a healthy summer.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Chief, I do have
I just,
all right. Ladies first, Kathy, go ahead.
Thank you, David. Chief, I just wanted to thank you and your department. I know how quickly you had to pivot as, photos became available, videos were circulating, and I just wanted to thank you because I know you were out there all weekend with your staff, and the community appreciates it.
Yeah, thank you, Kath. I also want to make a note of that too. It's, I mentioned Saturday night we had 120 calls for service. We try to prioritize. We try to do the best we can. We simply, through sheer numbers, can't have an officer at every one of these locations. And, we're really asking for compliance. We're trying to communicate ahead of time during the day and early in the evening so they understand really what they're supposed to be doing and how it's supposed to look to meet compliance with phase 3 and moving into phase 4. We just physically can't be at, we have over 80 licensed establishments in the town of East Hampton. And I think over 50 something have submitted the outdoor seating plans. And as hard as the fire marshal has worked to review those seating plans and make visits there, there's only a handful of fire marshals. And when we start stacking up calls on a night shift like that, we need those calls referred to us, and we need people to report that. My message to anyone in the public is, please call us when those things are observed immediately. Don't just share it or post it. We can obviously try to share that back to the regulatory authorities after, but we'd rather try to get somebody there to stop that activity and, provide safety and security and health for the community in real time rather than review it later. So it's a big challenge. We can't be everywhere at once. And, we appreciate the public having a little bit of patience with getting us back to those things.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, Chief, to make the town aware directly in real time when things happen. It's not helpful to send, a post on Facebook or something like that of the day before, 2 days before. If you can let us know immediately in real time when you see something like this going on. We worked really hard in the reopening process through the Business Recovery Committee and outreach to the East Hampton and Montauk Chambers of Commerce. We've had a lot of direct conversations with business owners, the vast majority of whom, are operating responsibly. And because we've had this direct outreach and everyone knows what the rules are, for something like this to occur really is flagrant at this point. And, if we can't get compliance, then we're going to have to take more severe actions. It's just not fair to everyone in town, whether they be residents or other business owners, to have this kind of activity occur. And because it is a public health threat. We have an incredible number of people here in any given summer, maybe 4 to 5 times our year-round population. And we have a wonderful hospital on the South Fork, Southampton Hospital. They increased their capacity to meet demand during COVID, and we never became overwhelmed. But with so many more people here in the summer, we have to be cognizant of the fact that if we have a hot spot, if this spreads, this comes back and resurges, then we risk overloading our healthcare system at a time when there are many people here. And there are all sorts of other injuries and health conditions that people experience in the summer. So they're going to be busy enough already. So let's all follow the safety protocols and keep this disease from resurging.
And Chief, my question to you is, I know some of the concerns that we've had recently for some individuals Noting that dining capacities have been decreased, I think our beaches at nighttime are being used for beach fires. People are probably, take out food, going to the beach, sitting on, it's been beautiful weather, let's just be honest, sitting at the beaches. And I wanted to reinstate that there's been no relaxation of the beach fire policy within the town of East Hampton. You still have to be beach fires have to be in a container right now. They have to be a certain distance, 50 feet, I believe, away from the dune line, and then also have a 5-gallon bucket of water next to you also. And I just want to make sure that, Marine Patrol is patrolling the beaches for beach fires as two things. First of all, it could be a public safety hazard as far as embers, but also if you don't properly extinguish your beach fire or leave it on the beach smoldering, next day it's still hot, and that could injure people as it has in the past. So I just want to reconfirm with you, Chief, that is still correct.
Yeah, absolutely still correct. And, additionally, we can't have the fires too close to the lifeguard stands as well. I don't have the exact distance, but they can't be within, I think, 30 or 40 or 50 feet of a lifeguard stand. And at least twice in the past 2 weeks, we've had a leftover fire, within about 15, 20 feet of the lifeguard stand. And, Marine Patrol is out there at night. Our guys are out there at night. We're doing the best we can to gain compliance. Again, we can't be everywhere. We have 70 miles of shoreline. So we really need people to think when they go down and do these things. And, think of the children who may come down to the beach in the morning to go for, a swim or to run around on the beach. And the risk of hot embers on the sand is tremendous. They have to be in a container. And like you said, they need the bucket of water, and you need to take everything with you when you leave. It can be a little inconvenient. If you take some steps to make sure you're prepared to do it, it's really not that hard. And we really ask everyone to try to do the right thing with that. Additionally, we're still at the 25-person gathering limit. So a gathering doesn't just mean you can now have a party for 25 people. If you really read, you're still supposed to maintain distancing from those who are not in your household. You're still supposed to put a mask on if you can't maintain distancing. Even though it's in open air at the beach, use your head and spread your beach chairs apart a little bit. Sit on the opposite side of the fire from someone who's not in your household. Still continue to take steps to make sure we're reducing the risk of spread, and, enjoy the outdoors and enjoy the beaches. Just work with us to help keep them clean and safe. That's our message.
And Chief, lastly, I know you talked about the beaches and the crowd control, social distancing. I know that the Chief, myself, Ed Michaels, John Ryan Jr., Chris Chinque from Montauk, who's the lieutenant out there, and Marine Patrol, Mitch, forgetting Mitch's last name, we mustered up on Friday at the Montauk precinct, and we walked the beach as a group, including myself, with 10-foot poles to social distance groups of individuals that were in the downtown Montauk area, and then also at Dish Plains. And I would say 100% of the individuals that we asked to either separate or move by a couple feet. Everyone was extremely compliant, and for the most part, everyone said thank you very much. One kid, I don't know what 21 is anymore, but one kid said, where we come from, they would have just taken our beach balls away from us and told us to leave. We're trying to educate them on the governor's executive orders, and we want to see people back there, but in a safe distance way. We do have drone photos. I can show them later on also. But I want to thank actually your Marine Patrol also for walking the beach with the lifeguards, having that presence out there, and myself too.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing, and it was really the communication effort that was going on to get that press release out on Sunday, to see, the communication between the police department and with the supervisor, and to get that press release out was great, because on Sunday, I think it helped tamp down a lot of fear and a lot of anger that was going on between a few people that saw kind of the partying situation, and to know that our police department was on top of it, and that they issued summonses, and that it was taken care of as far as it just made them feel a lot better. And I really have to applaud the police department, fire, everybody involved in that, and the supervisor's office for getting that communication out so quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. We've been in constant contact almost on a daily basis for the last 120 days, right, Mike?
Yep.
And weekends, might be time off for others, but I know the chief is busy working, as am I, pretty much every weekend. And when something comes up, we know we need to deal with it immediately. So.
Yeah, thank you. Because when I saw it, I knew, right away that there was no time off for you, Peter, and I really do appreciate.
Well, and there's no time off for the chief either. And I just have to say, there are a lot of essential workers in town that have really done such a terrific job to get us to this point. And that's why I think me personally, I get really upset when I see people paying absolutely no attention, because I know how much suffering has taken place to get us to this point.
Yeah.
People losing their jobs and whatnot, and we need to get back. And so it's just incredibly reckless and inconsiderate to behave in a way that could bring back this disease before the summer's over. So I just think we need to continue to stay on that and ask people to comply with those regulations. It's not that big of an inconvenience, and we can all have a great summer if we just follow those guidelines.
Just wanted to add a quick thank you to Mike as well for I know how busy the weekends are, and you always get back to me promptly on the weekends, which is very helpful because there's a lot of anxiety in the air, and you often have the facts and can settle things down. So much appreciated.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we'll let you get back to work, Chief. Thanks so much. Appreciate all you do for us.
We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Okay. Take care. Be safe. Next up, we have Community Development Block Grants with Tom Roll. Tom, are you still with us? Yep. There you are.
So as the board may remember from a couple of months ago, the CARES Act included money for community development block grant agencies, and the town is member of the Suffolk County Community Development Consortium, which essentially is the 5 East End towns, Smithtown, and a smattering of villages, including Sag Harbor and Greenport, but not East Hampton Village. And so Suffolk County administers that program on behalf of the consortium members. And Suffolk County got money based on the allocations that are used in the regular community development block grant program, which is based on the population of the members of the consortium. So everybody fill out your census. So we get our numbers up every time there's they're allocating money. But so back when I polled the board about 2 months ago about what we could use this money for, the two big things that came up with rental assistance and food pantries. And the county ran some of that stuff through HUD, and HUD said, well, the food pantries are getting money through a different part of this CARES Act. But rental assistance was something they were okay with. In fact, they figured out a way to do it with CBG money, which is Community Development Block Grant. A number of the other towns wanted to do rental assistance also. And the county did not want to allocate out the Community Development Block Grant money to each of the individual towns to run 5, 4, or more individual programs, because that just makes compliance much more difficult for the county, who has to file all the compliance paperwork with HUD. So a lot went back and forth, a lot of discussion. The county's going to run the program, but the towns are going to help get the word out. And the final details on the program are not available yet because it's really in development. But what is being looked at is that maximum subsidy per person of $2,500 or 100% of a monthly rent. Applications will go through Suffolk County. They are investigating using an electronic system. There may be a lottery, probably going to be some form of lottery, because there's probably going to be more demand than there will be money. They've also merging into that home money, which is something the consortium also gets, but the town would have to normally apply for. Home money is 80%, home money. CDBG is at 80% of median income. So for a family of 4, 80% is $101,280. Home money is at 60% of median, so that would be around $75,960 for a family of 4. So what this would be for people who are have had their income affected by COVID, and it would. We expect an announcement sometime in July as to when this program's going to take place, and the town will be assisting with getting applications out, according to the plan at least. At one point, Suffolk County had considered outsourcing the program to a third party. That was not received well by, I know, Southampton Town and East Hampton, or me. And they were going to pay administrative fees. So when they decided correctly that we should all administer this jointly, we said, well, why can't we get some of that administrative fee to help defray the cost of the program? So there's, in the proposed resolution, there's $5,000 for administrative support. That would be for things like ads, mailings, photocopying of stuff, things like that. But it's pretty loose because it's going to be community development, general admin. And the other thing, because there was some money after all the machinations left over, and they asked what we wanted it for, I made the decision to propose $10,693 for the subsidizing the town's response with the extra meals at the senior center, because that would be an eligible activity. This is not standard community development. It has to be related to meeting COVID-related expenses having a particular urgency. And the big thing I could think of that the town took up was the feeding of the seniors. And from last week's town board meeting, I realized, that it's costing the town extra money. So I figured we could use a small bit that we were being allocated to pay for some of those costs. And if the board, and what I'm asking the board today to do is a notice to solicit public comment. HUD has shortened the requirement to 5 days, and it just can be placed on the website. So if there is no comment, the board would be asked to make a final determination on the 16th. But we would coordinate, and we've already had discussions, if the board decides to go this route, coordinating with the finance and the grants people to make sure that we keep separate the cost allocation so that we don't double dip. The one thing we're not allowed to do is claim the same expense twice, which logically makes perfect sense. And there are FEMA reimbursements that have gone in, but we can work with the grants department. CBG will pay 100% of the cost. There's no matching cost. There is on some of the FEMA stuff. So that's what I'm asking the board to notice today. And down the road, when the rental assistance program is firmed up, we're certainly going to notify the board and have a public announcement made, and try to get the word out to all the people in the community who have had changes in income due to COVID and owe money to their landlords. And the checks are going to come from the county, and they're going to be payable to landlords. And the county has developed a form, and HUD just put out last Friday put out a recommended, or Thursday put out a recommended form for use in programs like this. And they're called TBRA, which is tenant-based rental assistance. The hope and the possibility is that if this program works and there's monies expended, that there may be additional money through the federal government available to help, because there's a fear of what's known as when the eviction deadline expires, or the prohibition against evictions expires, that you may have a flood of people who are behind in their rent and now face eviction. And this is trying to help address that issue.
Have questions for Tom?
Can you just, I'm not sure I caught this, I fully understand the notice provision that you were talking about. Can you just run that by quickly again? I'm not sure I caught that.
Anytime normally the town, when they get community development money, is required to have a 30-day notice and a public hearing.
Right.
HUD said, given the COVID situation and these are emergency funds, the town board has to pass a resolution saying this is what we propose to do with it, give people 5 days to comment, and then make a determination what they want to do. Or the normal process would be you have the public hearing and then you discuss what you want to do. HUD basically said here, you can scrap all that. What you need to do is you need to decide what you want to do with it, notice it, and let people comment, because it being an emergency and we're not having public hearings in public anymore, and there's a need to move quickly but still be somewhat transparent as to what we're doing.
Okay, thank you. That's clear.
So I have a question. So Tom, as I understand it, so there's the rental assistance program, and under that is actual money for rental assistance and also some funds for the administration of the program. Do you have numbers associated with that?
We would get
$5,000
for the administration of it.
Right.
All the money's been pooled together with Suffolk County. I think I don't have an exact number. It's being put in with something called home money also, which is another federal program. General expectation is that all the money is going to be, there's not going to be any money left over because the demand for this is going to exceed how much is available. I don't have the exact number for how much.
Do you have a ballpark?
I know the total amount that the county's getting for CDBG is a little about $838,000. Of that, they're adding to that home money, which is going to be a little bit more. But I don't know the numbers. I can get them for you before I can get them to you today, later, but I don't have them off the
So
top.
then will you be assisting our residents that need this, that are applying for the rental assistance program with the paperwork and applying to the county consortium for rental assistance?
Yeah, well, our plan is both to enlist human services who may have already had contact with people in that position.
Yes. And you know, Ola, I mean, there's been a lot of different organizations that folks have reached out to looking for, and you know, Sharon Bacon's, you know, program too. A lot of people are looking for rental assistance.
We're also going to reach out. We're going to try to, our plan is to reach out to some landlords also.
Okay.
Landlords that tend to have a lot of, you know, have a lot of clients living in there and tend to target year-round residences, apartment buildings. And this isn't going to be people that are currently being subsidized. They should be able to pay their rent. But you know, some of the motels in Montauk that have been converted to apartment buildings probably have clients that are in a tough situation. The one proviso of the home program is that the units must be legal. We are not able to subsidize people who are living in units that are not legally permitted to exist. That will knock out some people, but it is one of the federal requirements that cannot be waived. It has to be a legal dwelling unit.
And then how much money do you expect that could be available for meals for seniors, since we just did a $70,000 budget modification just for third quarter?
Well, 10,693 is the proposal.
Okay.
Well, $10,693. I know some of it being built to FEMA for reimbursement. And we will make sure we don't cross over, because that's the one thing the feds are going to watch carefully, is that you don't claim the same expense twice.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, thank
Other
you.
questions for Tom? Okay, Tom, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Next on our agenda, we have the Plovers Stewardship Report. Kim Shaw, our Director of Natural Resources, and Samantha Klein, and some say Plover and some say Plover. I don't know which you prefer, but
I go with Plover. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview, and Samantha's got a PowerPoint that she's going to share. So basically, my department has been overseeing the Endangered Species Program since 2012, and we manage 18 miles of ocean and bay beaches. The goal of this program is to encourage a successful productivity while maintaining public access and recreational use of our beaches. And the real key to the success of the program has been, reliable staff, all the volunteers, and gathering detailed, accurate information. This year we have a bunch of volunteers that are helping Samantha because it's a huge task that we don't receive any federal funding for. So without further ado, Samantha, you want to go through this?
Yeah, absolutely. So the piping plovers are protected under the Endangered Species Act and the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So this prohibits harming, harassing the birds. Some direct harm that could happen to the birds would be a vehicle hitting them, a dog getting to them, someone accidentally stepping on a nest. Harassment is a little more indirect impact that they're also protected from. So harassing would be approaching a nest too closely and causing the bird to get off the nest. This could interfere with incubation of the eggs. They have to sit on it to regulate the temperature. This is the fencing that we put around during their nesting season. So the birds start to come back here in March and April, begin looking for nesting sites in April and May. This fencing only goes around the upper portion of the beach, so it encircles the dune area. That's because that's typically where they tend to nest. Sometimes they do nest closer to the water, in which case we would bump out the fencing to accommodate that. So during this time, vehicles, people, dogs, they're still allowed through this area. They're allowed in front of the fenced off portion. And then that's due to adult plovers. They might still forage along the water, but they can fly out of harm's way. So we only need the nesting area protected. These are some images of nests taken this year. So on the ocean side, some of the ways we find the nests is through following their footprints. They're more clearly seen. You can follow them from the water's edge, and then they start to congregate around an area, and that's usually where the nest is, where it has the most activity. On the bay side, it's a little more difficult to do that. So usually I look from a distance, try not to disturb the plover, allow it to relax, and then it'll go to the nest and sit down on it. They lay eggs every other day till they complete a clutch of 4 eggs. And then from that point, it's about 4 weeks until they all hatch. This is the fencing we put up once we get close to the chick stage. So once they approach that hatch date, then we have to close the area to vehicles as well as dogs. People are still allowed to walk through this area. We have path signs indicating that. Vehicles aren't allowed through because the chicks are mobile upon birth. They're able to walk around pretty much immediately. I had a volunteer email me today, and the chicks at Maidstone that he's watching are only 2 days old, and they're running all around the beach. So this is to protect the chicks. They're able to walk in front of the water and around that area, but they can't fly out of harm's way. So if a vehicle were to go through, it could be a disruptance. Dogs also aren't allowed through. Tony Littman made us some really good signs here. These are images of chicks at different ages. Eventually, I want to have some sort of catalog or guide showing a chick from every age until the fledge date. These were all taken this year. As you can see, they're very camouflaged into the background. So whenever we locate a nest, I take the coordinates on my phone, and then we go back to the office and we're able to use GIS mapping to plot those coordinates onto a map. So this is an example of Georgica Pond. The blue dots indicate nests that were found. So there were 2 in front of Georgica Pond. We have some more pairs that haven't nested yet in that area. And then the light blue line below the nest dots, that indicates the area that has been fenced for no vehicles. Currently, we have 3 chicks very close to fledging in that area and 1 chick that's a little further from fledging. There could be potential for more, but that's so far what we've seen. The red lines on there indicate what a 1,000-meter distance would look like. So what our program does is that by monitoring and being at the sites regularly, we're able to see where the birds are foraging, the areas that they're covering, the distances that they typically go. And so we're able to do less than what the state guidance would be if we weren't able to monitor and be there. So the state would say to block down a 1,000-meter distance in either direction of the nest, which would be a significant portion of the beach area. So by going there, we're able to tell that this is a safer distance for the birds. People can still have their recreational activity, and the birds will be safe as long as they stay out of the fencing, which in this case would be the 255 meters that we've determined. This always has potential to change. If the chicks seem to be traveling more in one direction or the other, then we would accommodate accordingly. This is
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Where you have that closed off over there by Georgica Pond.
Yeah.
So how do emergency vehicles like Marine Patrol, they can't drive the beach there, or how does that work?
So if they did have to get through for some reason, we would just have myself or some Plover steward on site. So for instance, 2 years ago on Napeague East, there was a deceased whale that washed up on shore. And so they needed to get through dump trucks and a crane in order to remove the whale and do the necropsy on it. So in that situation where it was an emergency, they needed to get through, I was there along with my coworker, Lauren, and we walked in front of the vehicles to make sure that they were in a path that wouldn't harm the chicks. In terms of Marine Patrol, usually they just go around, enter from different areas, but if they had to go through, they could. We would just make sure that we're there.
Samantha, can I ask you to clarify, what's the relationship between the 1,000-meter setback? Is that a state DEC setback? And are you, when you set a 255-meter, I guess, sort of blockade area, do you do that in coordination with the state DEC? Do they allow, in other words, who's setting the, the rules for protecting the birds ultimately? Is it you or is it the DEC?
Right. So the DEC.
Fish and Wildlife?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so DEC and Fish and Wildlife Services, if an area wasn't being monitored, they would want to have a 1,000-meter distance because that's the potential that plovers have to travel. But based on observations, you're able to narrow that down. So this is pretty typical of an area that I would say a plover would cover, around 200, 300 meters. And the state is fine with that being reduced. It would just be if that site couldn't be monitored for whatever reason, that would be the protocol.
But also, Sam, is it in a coordination with the trustees on trustee beaches? I believe that the coordination that the town has with the trustees is actually larger than what the state requires, which is, to me, it's okay. Is that correct?
Yeah, the trustees, I don't have too much involvement with the Plover program. But yeah, if they had any concerns, we could definitely, revisit and extend it, make it a larger area. Of course, we always get pushback in both directions of we need more space that's protected, but we also get the opposite end too, that, people want to respect the environment, but they also want to be able to be there and enjoy it. So we definitely get both ends and just trying to find the right balance.
Right. And I just want to clarify that we do have an annual report to the state every year, and that we do send these maps to Marine Patrol and trustees as they're updated on a weekly basis. So the trustees know where all our nests are and our fencing.
I just want to make a comment about the town management program overall, and I think it's an important point to make in that we take on this responsibility and we have stewards involved, and the result of this is that we're able to keep large sections of our beachfront open and protect the plovers at the same time. We have a really robust program, and I just want to thank Natural Resources and all the volunteers who help make this happen. We're able to keep large sections open where if Fish and Wildlife, if we didn't have a program in place, Fish and Wildlife or DEC would just close full sections, as pointed out by that 1,000-meter line. You can see how much of that beachfront could be closed to public use in a given summer if we didn't have this monitoring program. So, it helps us to protect the plovers and also allow public beach access to the greatest extent possible, and have us all coexist with these little birds, which are on the critically endangered species list.
Tim, can I ask you, how do I know, now obviously now we're getting a good presentation on this. How does the town board know about this in the event that we're, dealing with some situation that is in proximity to where we've got nesting plovers? Do we have to come to you to ask, or do you typically circulate these maps to the town board in advance, just so we know? I'm just curious about what the communication is between us and the Natural Resources Department.
Right. So if there was an event that was going to take place on the beach with vehicles and whatnot, it's an application to U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the DEC. And sometimes I'm coordinating in the beginning, but I'm definitely in close contact with the DEC, who will depend on us to report on the findings. So it's a coordinated effort. I don't always get first notification, but Michelle Gibbons is my counterpart at the DEC, and she keeps us in the loop at all times.
So we're documenting nesting sites along the coastline, and I'll give you an example. The annual fireworks at Devon, for instance.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the impact that fireworks could have on the nesting birds. So that's reviewed. We've had, as Sam said, with the dead whale washing up on the beach, in past years, the plovers have decided to nest. Obviously, they nest where they feel most comfortable. They've decided to nest at a traditional beach access point. And so accommodations had to be made for the birds. And, we worked closely with the trustees and the various other stakeholders to make sure that, first of all, the birds were protected and the general public understood that we had nesting birds at this location, and that accommodations needed to be made.
Well, I'm asking specifically because we reviewed the deep water drilling on Beach Lane, and I found out afterwards, although I was pressing for environmental review before they took that action, but I found out afterwards that there were nesting plovers in the vicinity, and I just want to know, how we can prevent that from happening, because the plovers were really not part of our discussion on that.
And I think that in that case, the fact that there was activity in the parking lot, none of the activity was actually even on the beach, Jeff. So if there was concern about plovers being in the town parking lot, then we would have had to close down the town parking lot to all.
I just want to ask Kim.
And so I think, there certainly is an awareness of where the plovers are each year. And again, it's reviewed by the state and the Fish and Wildlife Department.
I just want to follow up with that. I want to follow up with that with Kim.
Please go ahead.
Is there, as I said, we weren't discussing plovers when we talked about deep water, and there were piping plover nests and least terns nesting there too. And I'm just wondering if there's a way, Kim, and I'm directing this to you, that we can be sure that we can make the communication a little bit more certain, so that when we have something we're discussing that's in the vicinity of piping plovers, it's on the record and we discuss it. That didn't happen with Deepwater, and I'm just curious if what.
So Jeff, I want you to be specific when you say Deepwater. What specifically? Because I'm sorry. Let me finish phrasing my question. Because we've had extensive review of the landing site. DEC's weighed in. Everybody's fully aware that plovers nest along our coastlines, and specifically in these locations every single year. And if you're referring to the geotechnical drilling in a parking lot, when you say we didn't review it, vis-a-vis, plover nesting sites and the potential impact of plovers, I'm just trying to figure out, is that what you're concerned about? That there was activity in the parking lot that might have affected the plovers?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm concerned about. And I think it would have been helpful if it had been part of the discussion. So my question to Kim is, just how can we make sure that issue is, on the table? Do we have to come to you, knowing that it's possible that they're plovers, or do you track what the town board is doing? I'm just trying to see if we could improve that communication a little, so that at least there is a discussion about the plovers, which there wasn't.
Right.
At the airport.
So in this situation with the Orsted, the agents for the company knew that they needed a DEC Fish and Wildlife permit. And that is how I found out about the project. Michelle, like I said, coordinated with us. Samantha went out to the site, confirmed the nesting sites, and found the Wainscott Pond birds. And we put together a map very similar to this. And the DEC's condition was no vehicles on the beach. Everything had to be contained in the parking lot, even though it didn't meet the 1,000 meter setback. But it's fairly common, if you come up with a management plan, provide a plover steward, and are the maximum distance away from the nest, the DEC Fish and Wildlife will grant permission for activities to occur in the area. It's really the vehicles that they frown upon. So we've gotten, it's not a variance, it's just permission from the state and Fish and Wildlife to hold events, and Devon's a good example. We had birds right there in Fresh Pond, where we've never had them before. And the crew chief provided a management plan, stewards, and the DEC and town staff were all on site to make sure there was no disturbance. We blocked off the exits to the beach. No one was allowed to sit on that portion of the beach, and it all worked out. So they take it case by case situation as to whether or not they're going to let an activity occur.
If I could also jump in.
They'll make adjustments. It would be, I would have preferred to have known about that while we were discussing.
Well, Jeff, actually, in a June 19th email that was sent to the board, it was noticed that the Deepwater Wind actually had their own environmental plover monitors for that specific 2-day action also.
That was after the fact, yes.
No, it was not. It was actually before the fact.
Well, it was after we had made our decision.
It was after we had made our decision. The knowledge was that they had them on site and
I understand that, and I'm saying again, that was after we had made our decision. I'm talking about having this knowledge while we were making the decision.
Jeff, a number of us on the board have this knowledge because we are in contact with our departments and we're aware of what's going on the beach, and we have a long history of knowing that there are plovers that nest in this area, and that we take precautions to ensure every year that those plover nests are not disturbed, as this presentation clearly points out.
And if I could just jump in, Jeff, what I do during piping plover season is I reach out to natural resources, and I include it as part of my liaison report for springs where there are nesting plovers in springs, so that I can let my folks know on the committee where those sites are. So I reach out to them and do that, each piping plover season.
I'm just noting that there was no discussion of piping plovers when it came to the Deepwater soil.
We appreciate you making that point.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
Peter, please. We're on the same team here. I'm just making a suggestion to try to make things a little bit better moving forward. That's all I'm doing. I'm not getting in a fight. I'm just making a suggestion.
So
if there are piping plovers nearby and we're talking about doing something on the beach, it would be helpful to have that information as a part of the discussion. That's all I'm saying.
So what we could do moving forward, Samantha can share the early 2021 maps as soon as they're available. We do a presentation usually every year on results of the plover season. So maybe we'll just make a note that we'll get these maps out sooner rather than later so that everyone is aware. We just don't want to distribute these widely. Some people feel that the beach use has been restricted, might do something. So we kind of keep these in-house, just so there's no disturbance in the areas.
Well, yeah, I think it'd be very helpful if the town board members got it. I think we can
We'll do that.
Trusted with the information. Thank you. I think that's a very good suggestion, Kim, and I appreciate it.
And Sam, one of my last
Sam, thank
is,
you too.
as you know, I'm a big beach user. And on the state park, there's two locations, I believe, where there's plover nesting. One is actually on the Coast Guard beach, which is being done by the federal wildlife. And then the second is on the state. And I believe, does the state have their own monitors? And then the feds come down and monitor their own sites also, which is on Atlantic Avenue. Is that correct? And the town allows them to monitor those sites. Is that how it works also?
Yes, that is how it works. So we coordinate with the state, county, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. So based on who owns that beachfront, that would be who would be the associated monitor. So yeah, Atlantic Avenue is Fish and Wildlife Services, and then Napeague State Park and Hither Hills area, that is state parks.
And do you have their coordination as far as when their chicks fledge also, and those timelines for removal of their fencing? And
so for any data updates, I reach out to them and vice versa if they want to know anything going on. Things do tend to change day to day in the field of locations, if nests and chicks get lost. So it does change a lot during the season. So more of the final report is where we really coordinate, but we can always ask them for updates as we go too, if there's, specific sites.
But there is shared information before the season starts. Samantha participates on conference calls and make sure everyone has everyone's contact information to make sure it's a smooth season.
No, it's greatly appreciated. Thank you, Sam, for the information.
Yeah, absolutely. This is some data from 2019. So we had 53 chicks that fledged, 40 pairs. Productivity is calculated by the amount of fledges over the amount of pairs. So 1.3 is pretty good for the Endangered Species Act that they're protected under. 1.5 would be the productivity aim, and we would want to sustain that for quite a few years, and then they might be in a better place to reevaluate. As far as right now for 2020 data, these are the different sites and the associated information. So Sammy's is a very productive site for us. We have quite a few chicks there. Albert's, we had chicks there for the first time last year. We talked to the DEC, and in 25 years of their data, that was the first time they've been documented on Albert's. So we were happy to see them nesting there again this season. Georgica, as we were just talking, is a very productive site with both plovers as well as terns. We're pretty mid-season in terms of some sites have chicks that are close to fledging, whereas others have new nests. At Wainscott, we're still waiting for 2 pairs that are territorial in an area but haven't nested yet. So we're very mid-season on everything that's happening.
So Sam, with 1.33 recruitment, so we're seeing the numbers slowly creep up. The lifespan of the birds is important to kind of understand as to whether or not 1.33 is actually a good number or not. And I understand that we had a bird that showed up, I think it was at Maidstone, that actually was banded, and that the bird had been banded. I think it was 15 years prior, Kim?
I think it was, 15.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, they can actually live for quite a while. And, I think that's encouraging that we're seeing a 1.33 rate. I know that a number of other communities have not seen that kind of a rate. So we should be proud of the fact that we've done a good job in managing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that was a significant increase from 2018. I think the productivity was 0.71. So this was a big jump to have 1.33 last year. And for this year so far, things are looking pretty good. We have quite a few chicks and birds are still nesting and re-nesting. So it seems like we're doing pretty good.
Any other questions for Kim or Samantha? Samantha and Kim, thanks so much for the presentation. We appreciate the update.
All right. Thank you.
Michael, do we have any callers on the line?
Yes, we do. I will. Oh, sorry, they just hung up. We don't have any more callers presently.
Okay, we'll move on then to the town recreation programs. That's
hello, everyone.
Rooney and Councilman Lees.
Yeah, let me just lead
John.
into this for John Rooney, our department head for Parks and Recreation, is with us here. He's going to be going over just an overview of the department's Park and Recreational update for the summer of 2020. As we all know, it's a summer like no other. And we just wanted to make sure that the general public is aware of programming clinics and just answer any of the board's questions. So I'm just going to screen share a second.
Yeah, so David's going to bring up just some screens. There we are. Want to go to the second one?
Yes, I will.
So this has been coined the summer like no other. We have some unique challenges this year, and we'll go over some programming that we're going to look to offer, and then we'll go over those and just kind of like a mini timeline as to how we got to where we are at the moment. So back in the middle of March, it was around the 13th, the town had declared its state of emergency due to the health emergency. And at that point, we had immediately closed down all the public playgrounds. And as we went into that weekend, we ended up shutting down the Amagansett Youth Park and the Montauk Skate Park, the gymnasium at the Playhouse. We had suspended all programming and all clinics. And we also then, at the different places where folks can play sports on the fields and different courts, the basketball courts, tennis courts, volleyball courts. We took down all the netting, and we also closed off like the hoops on the basketball courts. Buildings and Grounds had gone in and made it so those activities could not take place, and just had everything closed down until further notice. And so that's been happening. And if we can go on to the next one.
Okay.
We had back in May, then we had beach action plan because we had to start opening up the beaches for Memorial Day weekend. And at that town board meeting, we announced the plan between the Recreation Department, the Police Department, Marine Patrol, the trustees. David Lease was part of that group, and what to do with the lifeguards and the staff for the Recreation Department, and getting ready for that weekend. And we put in a lot of things in place, as you guys were all talking about earlier. And it's been going very well from our perspective. We think it's been very successful, and it continues to happen at this time with the lifeguards dealing with everything on the sand, recreation staff helping in the parking lots at the ocean beaches, and as beach ambassadors, and just reminding folks to please adhere to the state's guidelines so that we can remain open and continue moving forward.
John,
and then,
just a minute.
Sure.
Can everybody see the PowerPoint?
No, it's gone. So it was up and then it wasn't. There we go.
Beautiful.
The back?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. So, and then last week, we had had hired our staff for this summer for some programming. We'll go over that in a moment, to bring recreation staff back and have some modified offerings. So just as the supervisor had mentioned earlier, to try to have the best summer possible. So so that hiring took place. And then we also, the programs that we're going to offer were also done according to the New York State Forward Guidance for this COVID-19. We had to put in place different modifications and how we handle things just a little differently. And then we also had our plan was reviewed by the town's medical consultant, and he had looked it over and gave it the thumbs up. So we moved forward with those plans. And if you go to the next one, there you go. The New York State had put forward a very detailed guidance for sports and recreation for how to go about offering anything. And then the next slide shows that there's they also had put out a kind of like a summary, an easy reference guide for how to handle any programs and clinics that you might be happening or things taking place on the town's fields. And so we followed all that guidance very strictly, and sometimes we'll even go a little beyond just to be safe. So those are the guidelines given by the state to help us to put those things together. And if we can move on to the next one. So the programs that we're offering for this summer according to those guidelines, we're going to start the junior lifeguarding program. Is going to start up this coming Saturday, July 11th. And that's for ages 9 to 14. And we're only taking in kids who have been previously in our programs or who had already qualified in the past. So we're taking veterans only, just to make it dealing with the beginners is going to be more challenging, keeping social distancing and all the protocols in place. So we're just going to offer it to veterans. We're also going to offer the sailing program, and that we're going to cut down the numbers a bit so we can keep social distancing throughout the day and have a maximum of only 2 in each sailboat as that program goes on. We're also going to start up our swimming instruction program. That's our free swimming program. We've been running it for decades. And this program, we modified it in how we're not going to have beginners and advanced beginners, but just the intermediate and the advanced swimmers for this season, just because there's a lot of hands-on instruction that needs to take place with those beginning swimmers. And so we're just going to forego that at this time. And then tennis and basketball clinics we're going to offer, which are also called the youth park clinics. They're going to take place over at the Amagansett Youth Park. Those programs have also been modified, whereas you have to bring your own tennis racket. For basketball, you'd have to have your own basketball. In basketball, there's going to be no passing of any kind, no sharing of the basketball. So even though those are kind of skills that you need to have for basketball, there are ways to work on a lot of different skills and do things that can stay within the guidelines and not have that element, but still allow kids to still develop those skills. And the other thing that we also did is usually the tennis and basketball clinics are usually both given in the evening at the youth park. We've spread that out. We're going to have the tennis program in the morning and the basketball in the evening, just to make it less dense at those times. And that park will be managed in a special way while those programs are going on to keep everyone distance apart. And then we're also going to offer our Nipper Guard programs. That program is usually for ages 6 to 8. This year, we're going to not have the 6-year-olds, the beginners, just like the juniors who are a little bit older. We're just going to have the 7 and 8-year-olds in, those who are veterans to that program as well. So, and then all the programs together, there are universal protocols that all of them have that share. And then we have unique protocols for each one. So those are the programs that we're going to be offering. As I said, the junior lifeguards start this Saturday. The sailing, swimming, tennis, and basketball start this coming Monday. And Tuesday is when the nippers start. So that's what's happening with some programming, and we can go to the next one.
So John, I see that you have all of the information already posted on the town website under.
We do, yes.
Government and department, and then recreation. You have everything posted. I think we also may want to get the word out more broadly that these are starting up.
Yeah,
because
we're going,
I see that swimming instruction, and I know my kids went through this program. Starts Monday at Maidstone, and we need to let families know that this is happening.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to get out, word of mouth, and like I said, out. And this is another reason we're here at this meeting to help get word out that these programs are happening. We've been getting phone calls and emails from folks the last several weeks, so word is now starting to get out. Signups have been happening with the lifeguard programs and the junior lifeguards and the nippers. You can actually go online and do your sign up for putting in your information for your child online. And then once the first day of the program, that's when the parent would fill out a waiver and then also make their payment for the program. And for the other programs, the sailing, swimming, and tennis and basketball, they would come here to our office. We have signups going on outside of our office. Come out, ring the bell. We'll come out and greet you, and then sign up.
Tell people where their office is, John.
Yeah, sure. Here in the town hall complex, we're back behind the courthouse, Parks and Recreation building, the white building. You can come around and sign up with us, or you can even mail in an application with a check as well.
You're better off instead of actually using U.S. Postal Service to use the drop box in front of Town Hall.
That's another way.
Yes. Gray drop box there. The mail delivery, as many know, has really been overwhelmed, and we've actually received some permits and whatnot that took 3 weeks to get to us through the mail. So.
Yeah, we've even received some signups through that process already as well. And then we'll move on to just so the town recreation facilities, just to give an update of where they're at. Tennis courts are open, but they have protocols that are posted at the tennis courts recommending how to conduct your tennis game. And playgrounds are now open as well. There are precautions that are set up at those sites. And as of July 6th, yesterday, the state had allowed that parks could be open for lower, moderate, and higher risk sports based upon their guidelines that they had put out. So we might start seeing more people showing up at different parks as a result of that. However, the town basketball courts, volleyball courts are still closed at this time. The youth and skate parks are still closed. And there are no reservations being taken for the picnic areas or Fort Pond House at the moment. So we're just awaiting eventually to have a change with those. But folks can still use the parks, obviously. We're just not taking reservations at the moment.
And we'll continue to review that as we move forward. We may relax that in the coming weeks. We're now entering phase 4 on Wednesday. So
Wednesday, yeah.
Yeah, so we may, and the overall gathering numbers are going to be raised to 50. Again, you have to wear masks and socially distance, but groups of up to 50 will be part of phase 4.
Yep, and in light of the changes that have been happening, we just wanted to maybe have the town board just consider or think about maybe at the Amagansett Youth Park. Maybe think about opening that park for tennis, skateboarding, and the playground, the walking track, but maybe not for, the basketball. We could have different parts of the park open or not. Obviously, when we're running the tennis and the basketball programs next week, the park will only be open to those activities, and nothing else in the park is permitted unless a change happens with that. So those would be the only activities there. And then we've already spoken with Buildings and Grounds. They'll have the cleaning crews in there and re-cleaning out those comfort stations according to protocols for COVID, and then have them ready for when the evening session begins with the basketball at night, and it'll be closed down in the middle of the day. We also just wanted to maybe consider reopening the Montauk Skate Park, but not its basketball court. We wanted to maybe throw out for consideration for allowing organized softball leagues who present the town written protocols for how they would handle social distancing and keeping things as safe as possible. And we would also recommend at the moment to continue to keep the gymnasium at the Montauk Playhouse closed for the moment, being it's indoors. And let's give it maybe a little bit more time. And the last point that we're just making is that all the programs and clinics will be constantly reevaluated. Changes could occur in terms of scheduling on the fly, or we could suddenly maybe even have to cancel, or in response to any changes that happen in terms of the health crisis. So we are aware of that. And so, we just have to always be ready for in a state of flux, I guess you can say.
Right, absolutely. So in terms of the considerations, how does the board members feel about these activities that are listed here? I think, at this point with phase 4 going into effect on Wednesday, and the fact that the governor is now allowing softball and other similar activities to proceed, we should consider reevaluating our position on that. Any comments by board members on that?
Yeah, I did receive from one of the softball leagues written protocols that they would have for play, how they would resume play, and I did send that forward to Dr. Bruce Polsky, our consultant, and he received his thumbs up on that. He did ask about how they would monitor spectators. And they then they amended it, and it works within what the guidelines are. So that was one thing that I've looked into with Dr. Polsky already as far as softball leagues. I think, John, if it's right, we only have 2 leagues right now.
There's usually there's like an adult that kind of mixes here in East Hampton, a men's in Montauk, and then a women's league here in East Hampton. So there's potentially 3.
So then, go ahead, Jeff.
I'm just curious, because I like softball. What do they do about, you're obviously everybody's touching the ball. What do they do? Do they just sanitize their hands in between innings or something? Or
yeah, it's just that's what's considered on the state guideline as a moderate risk sport, because it's not, even though you're sharing the object of the ball and that's just part of it, you could end up tagging someone at a base or whatever. You're just keeping distance as much as possible and playing the game. But yeah, it's that middle ground, and that's one of the sports that was specified by the state as they were going to allow to start happening again as of July 6th, as long as your region was in phase 3 and then you reached July 6th. That was one of the sports that they were allowing to be played basically as normal. So we're just
however,
is that different than category. Are they still doing this thing with tennis where everybody brings their own balls?
Yeah. Yes, that is the case. You can now, as of July 6th, now play doubles, but you'd still have to, as best as possible, have a set of balls that's different for the person who's serving. But we mostly recommend playing singles if possible. And there's even the Pro Tour now. They've even started playing tennis matches without ball kids, and they've been. If you see like on the tennis channel, and you see that they're actually you'll see the players picking up their own tennis balls and things of that nature, which you normally don't see. So as a result of these guideline changes, so it's going all the way up into the pro ranks.
So could we start with one at a time? So since we started with softball, and you're saying that Dr. Polsky has already reviewed all the guidelines, it's acceptable under New York State guidelines, then I would be supportive of having the softball leagues resume.
I agree with that, since both the state and our, consulting immunologists have both given thumbs up to this activity. I think, it's worth monitoring the spectator aspect of it, and just to make sure that the leagues are keeping the spectators properly distanced and wearing masks when appropriate.
Can you pass around the guidelines, David?
Yes. Sorry, am I on mute? No, I'm not. Yes, I will, Jeff.
So
Any other comments on softball?
No, I'm also comfortable with softball. Reading, it's a very detailed guidelines that they have in the master guidance for all types of sports, outdoor recreation, outdoor fitness, and such. And the protocol, the one protocol that I saw from this one league specifically meets them all. So I think it's something that can be done appropriately and also give individuals a little bit form of outdoor recreation.
Yeah, I'd just like to look them over just to see. I'm curious. I mean, I like softball. It's a great summer game. I would like to see the rules.
So from there, why don't we go back to the top of the list? Amagansett Youth Park for tennis, skateboarding, the playground, and walking track only.
So tennis is already,
Right.
can happen. Where does skateboarding fit under, or does it?
Well, skateboarding, you're not sharing as long as you're, distancing, wearing masks. I wouldn't think that would be an issue. So if you have, several people, maybe not queuing everybody on the top of the half pipe at one time or something like that.
Yeah, Kathy, just so when you look through all the different sports, it's basically the guidelines seem to be dividing sports from lower risk to higher risk,
right,
based upon whether you're sharing an object. So, like the supervisor was just saying, in skateboarding, you're on your own board, you're moving around, unless you run into somebody, you're basically not touching anything. Tennis is less of a chance because if you're serving your own ball, I'm touching my ball when I serve it, when I toss it in the air, but let's say you and I are playing, you could return that ball to me by just using your racket, kicking it with your foot. A sport like, football, for example, two-hand touch, you're or tackling, or you're blocking each other using your bodies, touching, you're passing that object back and forth, touching it. Soccer would be a little bit less maybe because you're using your feet, but you could head the ball, you could chest the ball, you can be bumping into each other. So it's all about how much contact between the sports. Volleyball, everyone's touching the object. So those would be higher risk. So that's how they change that. So skateboard, that's the long answer to your skateboard question, is that would be less object sharing, so it's not as risky.
Right. But let me ask you, are there maximum occupancies for our skateboard parks when the kids are, out there?
I would get in touch with I'll talk to the town attorney's office, see if there is an occupancy that is, because we have occupancy for indoor areas, and that's supposed to be outdoor. But we could also, even let's say we didn't, we could put in place our own modified rule where we have a certain amount can go out. Maybe there's a waiting time and we rotate in, and we could certainly do those things, if things get crowded, I would think that we would have to do some in-house artificial implementations of those things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something you'd have to monitor based on, the attendance at any one of these activities.
Mm-hmm.
I drove by the public courts at Massachusetts Park and noticed that they were actively being used, their tennis courts, and they pretty much had doubles and singles both playing. But I think again, if you have 20 people wanting to skateboard all at once, you're going to have to regulate how many are out there on the park.
That's correct. I think we would have, if we do open that, we would have to limit the amount of users. Both the locations right now, typically when they're open, are actually monitored by recreational staff. So that either be done by signage or also just a change of the policies that the staff will have to make sure they implement.
I would support all of these activities, provided there's some follow-up and monitoring of the fields and courts.
And what I can also do for Jeff, I'll send it to the board, all these guidelines. But for anyone listening, any activities when it comes to the New York State reopening for sports and recreation guidelines or sports and recreation master guidance, or let's just be honest, for all business or anything that's reopening right now in any of the phases, there it's in, you can just Google New York Forward. I think it's newyorkforward.gov. And that will have all the information for any businesses for guidance set up in template format. They have to do their affirmations. It's a plethora of information as we continue to navigate through COVID. I recommend everyone going and reading them.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, no, I concur with you, Peter, going through all this. I'm supportive of everything, including keeping the gymnasium at the Montauk Playhouse closed for now.
Any other board members want to weigh in on the topic?
No, and the only other two things, I think we'll keep, it would be my recommendation to keep the basketball hoops closed and the volleyball nets closed in the town. And specifically because when you look at the master guidance, you have to do it for drills. Historically, our basketball courts or volleyball courts are used for games and not drills. So I think until anything changes from the state, that we should just not allow ourselves to put ourselves in, or our residents in the position right now to play games at those locations, which would not be allowed in the state guidance. So that's my recommendation, not to open. Yeah,
I agree with you, David. Right. I think that's the right way to proceed for now on the games, on games. Like
yeah, I was concerned about volleyball because that, you bump into each other a lot. You're in each other's space. It's very hard to not be in.
Yeah, you're right, Jeff. And I think we have 4 courts in the township. And then traditionally there's some on the beach right now. So going through the guidance with the next aspect of the beach action plan right now is to continue not having volleyball on the beach, but you are allowed to now throw a football on the beach and play beanbags. So we're going to reconvene that beach committee in the next couple of days to make sure that our town policies are reflective of what's allowed by the state. As we just, what the state guidance said is once you enter phase 3, if you've entered phase 3 after July 6th, so we want to make sure that our messaging from all the lifeguards, the beach ambassadors, and enforcement right now is all similar right now, and we're on point. So we're going to be reevaluating all that very shortly this week to get ready for this next weekend.
And I think that point's worth reiterating, that we're going to continue to monitor our progress against the suppression of the disease and the rate of infection. And, based on our continued progress, we can continue to move forward. Hopefully that's the direction we keep going. But if concerns are raised about certain activities because of increase of infection, then we'll probably have to pull back some. Hopefully we don't have to do that.
And my last consideration or just discussion point here is that I know John Rooney, he and I will contact our levels of enforcement, from code enforcement to police, because they've actually been looking at, I even seen Dave Brown kick people out of the skate park in East Hampton, to make sure that they'll be knowledgeable of what the opening hours of our parks will be. So we'll make sure that all staff members are going to be knowledgeable of when the parks are going to be open and what the level of enforcement changes are going to be also.
Can you circulate that, David, when you have it?
Yeah, John, we'll do that.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you.
Anything else on the town recreation program topic? John, I want to thank you for all your excellent work, both with the lifeguards this year and the recreational department, and following all the protocols and all the developments and all the adjustments that have had to been made. I know you dedicated some of the recreational staff to being beach ambassadors to help people understand, that they need to be wearing masks when transiting the beach area, the parking lots, and just what the spacing rules were and whatnot. And I've gotten nothing but positive feedback on those employees deployed for that purpose. So I want to thank you for all of your work. And David, we're working with John on recreation. It's good to see we're starting to move back towards some normalcy there and have more offerings for the general public.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. Thank you.
So we'll move on now to liaison reports. But just before we do, Michael, do we have any callers waiting on the line?
No, there are no callers on the line.
Okay, let's move on to liaison reports. Kathy, you have a liaison report for us?
Sure. I just wanted to start by opening up with, you can see that I'm still working from home, and that's because there was a leak in my office a few weeks back. An air conditioner compressor malfunctioned, and it was quite the mess. And Buildings and Grounds has been terrific, and I'm waiting on the repairs to be made and all the spackling and painting to be done. So until then, I'll be here in my home office. Human Services, so they have been doing a tremendous job, with our senior community, offering 5 frozen meals to those seniors that are in need. Means they don't have to go out grocery shop and whatnot. And we're going to hit a milestone this week. It appears that by the end of the week, we will have delivered 20,000 frozen meals since March 10th, which is just an astounding number. I mean, it's more than we do most years. So I just want to say, I want to thank the folks at Human Services and our folks in our nutrition program and transportation. And it was really, all hands on deck. So I'm, very grateful. And I'm sure, our community is for all that they do. They are still, offering free delivery of groceries, prescriptions, and other essentials. So if folks want to reach out to them and use a merchant that has a can do prepaid phone orders, we can certainly pick up, their needed essentials. And the number there is 631-329-6939. I just wanted to give some updates regarding the road construction on Springs Fireplace Road. As everyone's aware, there's a project going on. It's a county project from North Main Street to Woodbine. There are 2 crews that are out on the road now. They're working their way north. They're actually putting in the drainage systems for our rain gardens. And as they, work their way up right now, they're around the Queens Lane vicinity, right outside the highway department. We're also looking for the Safe Routes to School project to start. That's a sidewalk that goes from Woodbine to Gardner's Avenue so that our kids can, that live on the west side of Springs Fireplace Road can walk safely and be crossed by a crossing guard. So I'm looking for a start date on that project. And then in conversations with Steve Lynch this fall, he's looking to pave Springs Fireplace Road from Woodline to Sandlot. That's going to include millwork and reprofiling. And that stretch of roadway will have a 5-foot wide sidewalk on the west side, which is the Safe Routes to School project. And then on the east side, it's the narrower sidewalk that's been there. I inquired to Steve about adding bike lanes since the county project is going to end at Woodbine, but he tells me that he does not have it in his budget to do that. I've gotten some inquiries from folks over the last few weeks about the trucks that have been in town that are working on overhead lines. And I just wanted to, make everyone aware that that's a fiber optic project from Altice. Altice USA, which purchased Cablevision in 2016, announced just after that acquisition that it would embark on a 5-year fiber to the home plan for the entire Optimum footprint. So what we saw beginning this spring and summer was Altice beginning to build out this fiber to the home network here in the town of East Hampton. So it's going to, what the company tells us, it's going to enable multiple gigabit broadband speeds. It's my understanding that the current broadband speeds in the network are 400 megabits, and I have to believe that with all the folks that are working from home and streaming, movies and whatnot, programming, that it's slowed down quite a bit from that. But this should mean vastly improved services and enable more advanced services across the board as they're looking to go to 1 to 10 gigabits per second. And we've also had some inquiries. I know folks are concerned about 5G, and I just wanted to say that we're not aware of any immediate plans for 5G installations here in East Hampton town. Last month, the Spring CAC met, and it was a small group that got together and on Zoom, and the entire meeting was devoted to emergency communications in Springs, as everyone understands the critical need to improve public safety, both with emergency communications for our first responders, but also, for cell phone service. So the Spring CAC has a subcommittee, an emergency communications subcommittee, and we're going to be meeting tomorrow. And they're looking to see how we can get Springs an actionable and realistic emergency communications plan. I know that there's a planning board meeting tomorrow night, and they, are considering, an EAF for the fire department, and there's also going to be discussions about the chapel at that meeting. Next up, I wanted to just talk about special events. So as we, navigate, the phased reopening and whatnot, we've been receiving requests for special event permits. So each request is reviewed in conjunction with the governor's executive orders and the phased reopening. So Gabriella and I have been working closely with the town attorney's office to deem what is, allowed and what isn't under the orders. So for example, the town of East Hampton is currently unable to issue special event permits for gatherings on town beaches. That is because Governor Cuomo on May 22nd limited all beaches to 50% capacity and prohibits social gatherings of all sizes. And it is our understanding that that executive order remains in effect and will as we enter phase 4 tomorrow. So we're closely monitoring these and orders, and we will revisit when it is no longer in effect. We've also gotten requests for craft fairs and art shows, because as we know, our nonprofits, this is when they, sponsor these types of activities as fundraisers. And again, under the current series of statewide executive orders, in phase 3, it's 25 people. Starting tomorrow, it could be potentially 50 people are prohibited. So I know that comes, that's a hit for a lot of our nonprofit partners here in town. And I just want to say, I've gotten calls, well, then how come there's a farmer's market that is deemed essential under New York State guidelines? And because it's food production and folks, it's actually a safe way to shop, as all of our 3 farmers markets in East Hampton, Springs, and Montauk are all outdoors. And I will say that the reports that I'm getting from the managers and some of the participants at the farmers markets is that they've been incredibly popular, and many times the vendors are selling out. We have, though, issued some special event permits for outdoor low-risk recreational activities, because those, fall under executive orders. But the special event committee does ensure that safety protocols are satisfied, and most times they're sent to Dr. Polsky. Speaking of special events, we had a request. Kay Tyler, the executive director of the Montauk Chamber, and Paul Monty reached out to David and myself as they are interested in putting on a drive-in movie event in Montauk this summer and early fall. They were looking to see if it would be something that they could do a couple of times a month, Friday and Saturday evenings. They would charge by the car. The site they're interested in is Rods Valley. As you know, I guess within the last 6 months, David, we approved the management plan for Rods Valley. It is a CPF property that was purchased for recreation. And what David and I were hoping is that we could, see if there's interest on the board in us pursuing that with the Montauk Chamber. They would bring in other community partners. I know the Montauk Food Pantry would be involved in as well, and possibly another nonprofit in Montauk.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I did go to the site last week with Scott Wilson just to see about, just to put my eyes back onto the site itself and see if it would be a viable location for a drive-in movie, which actually is allowed by, the governor. It looks to be a spectacular location for, and hopefully a type of activity that's very, gives something for the people of Montauk or East Hampton to do, and also raise some good money potentially for the not-for-profits, including the food pantry.
Yeah, and from what, I hadn't gone out there with David and Scott, but the way it looks is if with the water at your back, it almost has an amphitheater kind of feel to it, because there is some, it does elevation.
Yeah.
So, Peter, Sylvia, Jeff, what are your thoughts of something that we can
entertain
pursue?
the proposal. I'd want to know more about it, but
Sure.
I don't, I wouldn't, dismiss it out of hand by any means. I think
great.
Something worth looking into.
And I like the outdoor movie idea. I would want to see, having been there and kind of walked around, but not for a while, where they're going to park. I don't recall the parking area being very big.
It's not a well-improved area, but
No, you'd be parking on grass, is where you'd be parking.
I'd like to see a plan and know how many cars and what the setup is.
Agree.
No, those are the kind of questions I would have as well. But I think it might be a great opportunity and could be a good location.
Terrific. Yeah. Okay. I want to talk a minute about the YMCA's. It's been closed since mid-March, and they continue to offer virtual classes. The June 28th, they opened up summer camp, and which was, welcome news for working families and their kids. So in the beginning, the guidance was that you were allowed 10 children per group. So they were operating out of the John Marshall School. School board generously are letting them use 5 classrooms there. So it was open to 50 children. And the governor last week changed the guidance and upped the groups to 15 children in a group. So now they can take as many as 75 kids. So if families out there are interested in sending their children to the Y camp, they should reach out to the East Hampton Y. They are also using the indoor pool at the Y for swim lessons. I should note that all health and safety protocols were reviewed by Dr. Polsky. And then starting next Monday, the Y pool will open on a limited basis for lap swimming. It should be noted that indoor pools are currently restricted by the Suffolk County Department of Health for 1 swimmer per lane. So the plan that the Y came up with is, obviously it's 1 swimmer per lane. They register for a 45-minute time slot. The sessions start at, on the hour. You sign up by an app. All this will go out to the membership. And you must be 18 or older. So in broad strokes, swimmers would go into the locker room, shower, as they always do, in their suit, go into the pool. It's a 45-minute swim, and then they would exit through the door at the pool so that it's one way in and one way out. Again, safety protocols were reviewed by Dr. Polsky, and he found them reasonable. So that is what I have for today.
Thank you, Kathy. David?
Yes, thank you. As Chief Sarlo mentioned, that it was a beautiful beach day all weekend long. A little fog in the morning. He did mention the Atlantic Avenue beach parking lot was temporarily closed on Saturday based on our restrictions and also the crowds coming. I do have to salute also, as he did, John Ryan Jr.'s lifeguards for going out and actually literally using 10-foot poles. I'm actually going to just, if you don't mind, just give me a moment on here. Within COVID, what we're trying to do right now is we're using a lot of our technology right now. And some of the technology that we're using is drone photography to it's very difficult when you look at an oblique view or from the ground level to see the distancing between individuals. So we have drone photography that I'm showing here from some of our locations, these being ditch plains. And the next example, if you can see this, is actually the lifeguard. This is from Atlantic Avenue. No, this is from, Indian Wells, using our 10-foot poles that go in between all of the beach users on the beach to make sure they knew about social distancing.
Looks like he's walking a tightrope.
It does.
Very true.
Just like we all are right now.
But what it does, it just reinforces to the community members that at all levels of the municipality, we're taking this seriously. We understand that we're still in a health epidemic right now, and that we're slowly releasing this valve. And part of this releasing the valve is not forgetting where you came from or forgetting what your action plan was. And we have multiple facets of this action plan, and we incorporated them all this weekend on a busy weekend. And I think we've all done pretty well at the beach aspect of it. So I want to salute again John Ryan's lifeguards for doing that, and the Marine Patrol for backing them up. At sanitation, permits are being issued at the sanitation department on Springs Fireplace Road in person. You can go there and get your sanitation department or permit, or you can also drop it off at our drop box at Town Hall. Amagansett CAC, we meet actually next week, but I want to have a discussion next week with some of the formal recommendations that the CAC will have as far as the time restrictions on the municipal parking fields that are under construction right now. Some of them are similar to what we heard before with some changes. I'll get some formal recommendations then, and hopefully we can get to get a discussion point on that before the lines get painted. Also, just the update on the Amagansett parking lot right now. The construction is still ongoing right now, delayed because of COVID, of course. They have completely installed now the IA system, which we have been notified. The Amagansett, the southwest alleyway has been ripped up and it's completely ADA accessible right now with new concrete. They are waiting the electricity. I haven't gone over there today. They might be installing the electricity, and we're still on ongoing, moving forward to hopefully have it completed within the next couple of weeks. Let's see here. Also, another municipal project that was just completed or very close to completed. We're just waiting for LIPA to set the transformers. The head of the harbor, Chief Ed Michaels. We're bringing boats into the head of the harbor right now. If you're interested in a boat slip at the head of the harbor, or at least, please contact the clerk's office. There might be some available still. The Property Management Committee, as we met the last 2 Mondays via Zoom also, just going over all of our properties in the town that we do. I alerted them to the second house and the restoration efforts. I did contact Bob Hefner about a time frame on there, timeline of completion. He says potentially November is about a good timeline for completion for this phase 2. And we will continue to move forward on that project right now. To alert the board, there has been the demolition of the Boys and Girls Harbor Pavilion has been completed as requested in the bid. That has been completed recently also. That building had become an attractive nuisance for vandalism, and I look forward to the next chapter of life of that location there. There was a discussion about the Springs Library right now. We're waiting some information there for our engineering report. And then also they brought up the Brooks Park, and I know we have an accepted demo bid on there, but they were requesting some more information on Brooks Park. And I don't know, Jeff, if you reached out about some information on that we were going to try to gather about that. I don't know if you had any other information that I can relay to them.
Yeah, I do. I've been working with the town attorney's office to make a fairly simple modification to the existing license agreement that just explicitly would authorize the group that holds the license to participate in fundraising activities with other fund granting agencies on a matching fund basis. And I want to circulate that modification as the board was unanimously in support of giving more time to try to work something like this out. The Gardner Foundation, which will not fund the town's projects, has expressed interest in helping out with Brooks Parks on a matching fund basis, and it might present the town with an opportunity where they would consider giving a grant directly to the licensee and the town could be in a position where we could match any funding that we wanted to contribute to restoring the one studio that's the real historic studio, and to renovating the other buildings, which are they're a part of the story of Brooks Park, but they're not as important historic structures as the Brooks Studio, which is the thing that the National Register is interested in. I had a discussion with some board members in the National Register who expressed interest in helping out. And so the next step, I think, would be to circulate this agreement between the licensee and maybe the Gardner Foundation. You may remember the Gardner Foundation.
I actually had a phone call into her. She wrote me on Friday, and I had a phone call into her today about other options, Catherine Kern. But did they give you a time frame on that, Jeff, at all? Because the reason why I asked is just as we did with, two things. We have to let the contractor know there's actually a bid out there, and then also just as Boys Harbor was, it's just the condition of it. We want to make sure that no one gets hurt around it. So I'm more concerned about right now about physically the safety of the project. How much more do we have to put into the safety of the project in the immediate right now?
My understanding from talking to Robert Strada, who visited the site recently and sent me some photos of it, is that there is no danger presented by any of the structures. They're in good shape. They're not deteriorating, and they don't constitute an attractive nuisance. So I don't think that's pressing us particularly. I think the next step is to engage his group with the Gardner Foundation and see what interest there is. A person from the Gardner Foundation was present at Town Hall on the day that they presented, and the town board unanimously said they'd like to see us allow them to have some more time to get this done. So I think the next step is to have Robert Strada reach out directly to the Gardner Foundation and start the discussions, and then circle back to the people on the National Register.
All right. Well, I'll bring that back to the Property Management Committee. Thank you for that update on that. The Nature Preserve Committee will be meeting this week, but I wanted to let the board know and the public know as they drive by that the Hedges Parsons Cemetery restoration has started as of this week. That is being done by the Burial Ground Preservation Group. The Hedges Parsons Cemetery is on Old Stone Highway, directly at the entrance of, just to the north of the entrance of the Spring School. I have alerted the neighboring property owners to it, Henrika and John Connor. They're ecstatic about it. It's the second project that we've done with the Burial Ground Preservation Group. I know another action that I know Catherine Kern from the Robert David Lighting Gardner Foundation enjoys. And it just shows another dedication of the board to preserve our rich history. I do have two questions of the board upcoming. Is I've been outreached, and it's a little bit based on recreation, by individual owners of of some yoga studios in town, about allowing for outdoor fitness classes, which is allowed based on state guidance, but in locations that haven't been designated for fitness studios based on the code. Meaning if they wanted to do it either in a park or at another commercial location, potentially on a temporary basis. And I wanted to try to see what the boards have had it fielded any of those questions or concerns. It's a way that we could try to do outdoor exercise for individuals and businesses, maybe on a temporary fashion, almost as we're doing through stipulation with the outdoor dining. I wanted to see
David, the first question I have, are these studios that have their own property locations currently?
Correct, yes.
Because if they have outdoor spaces, they will be allowed to hold a properly distanced session on their own private property.
Yeah, so I know one of these business owners does not have that availability on their property based on the pre-existing condition of the property. So they're looking for another commercial space that they can potentially just hold their fitness classes, and potentially maybe it's a stipulation to the other property owner that again would sunset at a certain time frame, either once allowed. or such. It's something that I could find myself supporting, knowing that industry well, but just trying to give some relief to another business sector in our township that actually does not have a defined opening time frame based on the guidance from the state, but also to do anything they want to do way.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a couple considerations with that. One is, when you have an existing business, you presumably have the parking for it at that location. So I think if you're moving that operation somewhere else outdoors to some other property, there'd have to be the ability for vehicles to park without impacting, the neighborhood or, taking up other parking. I wouldn't close out the idea personally, but I think it would have to be somehow reviewed on a case-by-case basis, because I think it could be problematic without some sort of review.
I agree with that. Has anyone else been outreached from anyone else, or has it been discussed potentially?
Yes. Yeah. Well, they came for a special event permit because they have a fitness studio and they wanted to do their program outdoors.
And I know that we had,
but they had the property to do it outdoors.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
They have an existing property that they have rights over.
Yeah.
John, maybe I can work with John to try to discuss this a little bit more about how we might be able to come up with some type of arrangement I can relay back to the board.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little reluctant to use like town parkland or whatnot for this kind of activity.
Okay.
I mean, we don't generally allow that on beaches or other parks now. And I think commercialization of the public property, I'm a little reluctant.
And no one's been requesting town properties, but I think it's mostly at other business properties.
So I think we need to just sort of have some way of reviewing it to ensure that it's not going to interfere with other businesses, whatnot. I mean, you're basically suspending, site plan and zoning in order to allow that, and to do it on someone else's property. I just think we need to have some process for review, so we're not.
I agree with you.
Problems.
I think parking's an issue, and what the turnover is, because you need a huge parking space if you're doing classes one right after the other. People haven't left as people are coming.
Yes.
And then the other businesses that might surround the business area could be impacted. So
yeah, I think we would have to put a lot of limitations on it. Yeah. Again, as we know in the code, as far as the parking regulations, it's got one of the most restricted parking restrictions as far as that use. So that's definitely a consideration.
And size of class would be a consideration, so that it would be COVID compliant. So
I'll work with John, the attorney's office, and see if I can bring back to the board for maybe a future discussion. And then lastly, is just I want to make sure that I know we were discussing meeting transcripts, and I want to just make sure we're moving forward on that. And I wanted to see if there's any update on that. I know because there's a couple other departments that, such as sanitation, that has some outstanding purchases they need to make. So I want to make sure if there's any update on that from either Jeff or John.
Yeah, we've definitely decided on Scribby as the service that's doing it. We're going to use a human service, not artificial intelligence, because we're getting better results with that. There were some almost comical results with artificial intelligence. And I reached out to Heath a couple days ago to suggest that we figure out a location on the website where to park these transcripts so that they're easy to find. And I actually included Carol in on that email, thinking she might have a suggestion as well. And I haven't heard back yet. That's just a couple of days ago. And I don't know, John, do you have anything more you want to throw in there?
The planners have been uploading the tapes to Scribby and getting the transcripts underway. I think we've got a few of them in. We just need to get a location for them to land on the website.
And who's
John, in terms of the town public hearings, our public hearings, do we have any of those transcripts prepared yet?
We have some of the CPF ones are done. Others are in process.
So we need to get those posted.
We do. We need a place to
Right.
put them. That's right.
Well,
Oh,
yeah,
why can't we
I don't know
put
why
them on the, we could
post them
put it
the
on the
page.
government page and just COVID
Absolutely.
transcripts, or, I mean, it's,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Should
I
it-
hate to
Whatever
say
you
it's
wanna
not
do.
rocket science.
I just,
We had spoken about having a link on the page when you first opened it so people could locate them easily, and we talked about that, I think, a few
Yeah,
weeks
well, we
ago.
can, yeah.
Hmm.
I think we should immediately be putting the ones up that we have done already, and while we figure out the,
Right.
maybe the ultimate home for them on the website.
I agree.
Like it'd be
do I
right
give-
on the homepage with a.
So do
Carol,
I give them to
Carol.
Heath? I mean, who's going to be the person that puts them? I mean, I have no idea how to put them on the
he
website.
said he could do it very, very quickly. He just wanted a little bit more clarity on, where to put it. I mean, Carol, I think our goal is to just make it very easy for members of the public. It would be nice if they could just get up on the website and see one place that said hearing transcripts, and then have them broken down into categories, ZBA, planning board, ARB, town board. If that sounds okay, I think Heath can do it quickly.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That would be a good start.
Okay, so
So
I can get back to Heath immediately.
great.
I'll send,
Because,
send Heath the
I'd like to start closing some of those open hearings, and if we're
Yeah.
waiting on, we can't close them until 2 weeks after the transcript has been
Right.
published.
I
So
understand.
we're going to have some more hearings coming up as well, and I just want to make sure that that process is smooth and efficient.
I thank you for that, and that's my liaison report for the day.
Thank you, David. Jeff, you have a liaison report?
Yeah. The LTV board met, and there's a lot going on in LTV, actually. I know everybody's aware of it because of their enhanced role during this time of COVID, and the work that Jason Nauer did to, get LTV up and running very quickly. And they acquired the additional hardware and software to be running the meetings. And now that other municipalities have seen East Hampton's online presence in the hearings, they've reached out to LTV. They're currently talking to the village of Sag Harbor, and there may be other folks that want to get in on the same technology. The creative director, Angela LaGreca, sort of did a review of the programming that they've got going. She's got a new show called The A Game, which is Angela's take on the world. She's got an interesting array of talent. She's a good singer. She's a comedian, actually, as well, and a local parent of a young daughter. So she's got connections to the community. There's a show that's ready to air called Bridging the Gap, which is a new local issue show that's going to be, I think, hosted by Anna Skrenta, who is an activist. I've seen her at some of the gun rallies and some of the other public events. And that's ready to air. And then there's a new show, another local show called Right Now on the East End with June Shafaroff. And that aired on June 18th and will continue to air. And Facts on 5, I guess, is going through a little bit of a transition. Dawn Watson, whom I think many of us know, is going to take on that show and continue to host it in a slightly different format. As you know, they've had, I know Peter is well familiar with Facts on 5, but we've had some other interesting guests as well. Adam Fine, the high school principal, Adele O'Brien from the Ellen Hermanson Center doing a show on coping with cancer. Mike Sarlo's been on. Andrea Grover from Guildhall's been on some shows, and Peter Haskell of Haskell Seafood. So that looks to continue, and I know Dawn's got deep connections to the community and can make it an interesting show. There's also a new show by Gene Shaparoff called Successful Philanthropy, and they're also running a show on Project Most and have had 6 episodes to date, and that's Ellen Watson's interest. And they also have done a number of public service announcements. They aired the best of for 4th of July so that there were, videos of prior celebrations and fireworks and parades. That's something that Peter had asked about. And they've done some public service announcements for CCOM on Earth Day, also Third House Nature Center for Earth Day. And Yuka Silvera, who we've seen at town board meetings, ran a spot on how to make a face mask. Yuka's an activist and always involved in issues. And there are some discussions with Guild Hall about maybe doing a Guild Hall show, which is, I think, would be kind of an exciting new venture for them. And they're looking at as well maybe doing a show going inside artist studios, which is always interesting to see artists in their workplace. The LTV staff is putting together an Our Town, Our View, which focuses on COVID memories. Let's hope COVID is a memory. It's not quite a memory yet. And they're considering actually running a virtual LTV benefit using some live video and then some tape video to get it done. And they're looking. I think the idea of the express sessions has sort of grabbed their attention, and they're wondering whether they might be able to run some similar kind of discussions on important issues. And at the same time, they're always looking to see if they can boost up sponsorships for members of the public who are interested in particular types of programs. The big technical news is related to something Kathy said, which is fiber connectivity. Fiber optics, according to the staff, are the industry standard. They load faster, they give higher quality, there's less need to push your reload button on your computer, and it's much more reliable. They don't run electricity through the fiber cables, so power outages are not generally a problem. They're more resilient, and as the LTV personnel said, it makes the world closer because they can do much more far-flung programming. They can even go international with a greater enhanced signal quality that they can produce. And they've done one international broadcast already, but they're looking to buy the equipment and actually get on board with fiber optic because according to what the board said, anybody who's in the business, the first question they ask LTV is, are you on fiber optic? And if you are, it opens up a lot of doors that they're hoping can be productive for them. It also, incidentally, is more secure. Just the technology, when it runs through copper cables, it can be tapped. Signals can be read from the copper cables. Doing that with a fiber optic cable is much more difficult. So it's a more secure system. So it's immune from temperature, moisture, and interference from signals, and also the fiber optic is independent of the company. It doesn't have to run back to a central place. So all things considered, they want to get on it and make it work for them. And to do that, they've bought some new servers. They're getting an existing video recording system to be more workable and accurate. They're doing some, they're playing catch up on some infrastructure in the building and equipment that has kind of been past the time for service and renewing, and they're getting on that. So there's a lot going on in LTV. They're excited, and I think especially in light of how important they've become to us in this time of COVID, we can increasingly recognize them as, moving. They really are sort of transitioning into becoming a real communications hub for us. And I think there's a big future with LTV. I wanted to mention the airport. I sent around a proposal to everyone that Jim Brundage forwarded. I think it was just yesterday. We want to move from Vector's multilateration navigation system and move into what they call ADSB, which is the state-of-the-art method of communication. It's automatically dependent surveillance broadcast. It shifts aircraft separation and traffic control from ground-based radar to satellite, which is much more accurate down to the ground. And it also broadcasts automatically the GPS position to the ground where it's displayed for air traffic controllers. And also it gets broadcast to other aircraft that have ADSB. So this is, where everything's going. And it increases, looks like it will increase safety at the airport because it increases pilots what they call situational awareness. They will know automatically who's around them, and I think it's an enhanced safety feature. And Jim Brundage sent us a very quick little memo with sort of the calculations on what it would cost and what it would save, and it looks like it's a savings, significant savings. I think Peter said it doesn't, looks like it's a solid idea to go forward with. So if anybody else read that email, I'd like to be able to go back to Jim and say, we can put a resolution on. If you need more time, we can do that. But
yeah, I mean, the existing system is, I think, 13 years old, and we all know how much technology has advanced in the last 13 years old. Just think of your cell phone or your home computer. As Jeff said, this is a much enhanced type of system. Will increase the radius of the radar from 10 nautical miles to 20, I believe, and will be a cost savings of thousands of dollars. So to me, it's kind of a no-brainer. It kind of serves us well in enhanced understanding of flight paths and altitudes and whatnot in real time, as well as saving us money. So, and the existing system is needing more and more maintenance as it's starting to fail, kind of being patched together. So I definitely support it. I appreciate you reporting that to us, Jeff.
Yeah, it's it was too expensive for a while, but apparently there's a new joint venture that Vector's using that brought the price down to make it, more economical.
Yeah, I believe the company is working directly with the FAA so that we can sort of tack on to the savings, I think, because of that.
So I'd like to put on a resolution to approve the switch. Kathy, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I support that. I did have a question, Jeff. I know you had sent me year-to-date figures for operations, but it would be helpful to have a comparison as opposed to just the 2020 and the absolute. Like, how does that relate to past years, so we could see, how where the numbers are? I'm sure down. And I was just wondering if you'd gotten a response and when we were going to get the presentation from HMMH.
Yes, I spoke to Jim Brundage about getting the comparisons, and I have spoken to HMMH. I talked to them about today's meeting. They had a conflict. So the next meeting, when we can schedule them in, I'll bring in HMMH. They're ready with their report. So they're ready to go, and I think it'll be interesting. I've talked to them at some length, and it's interesting. They have a lot of information to share. It's not just boring data. It really kind of gives you a good idea of what's going on in the airport.
Yeah.
So
and they're leaders in the industry. They're and they've been working with us for decades at this point, right?
So I'll get them in on the next meeting date. I wanted to mention Wayne Scott. I mean, I know that the board knows that there's talk in Wayne Scott incorporating as a village, and I know Peter knows this because they're having a meeting this Saturday, and they're going to have some presentation of that issue. The Wayne Scott Green is moving along. I've spoken to Steve Lynch, but he's not going to be around till the end of this week about giving us a price, and we've spoken to the company of PSEG about moving the power line pole, which looks like it has to move 15 or 18 feet to the south to make that turn into the road easier to do. So that's on schedule. And at this point, another thing I've already explained to Peter is that we had been the Wainscott CAC had been talking for some time about honoring Rick Del Mastro by naming the Wainscott Green for him, and they were holding off on going public with that because they wanted to give the family a little time to adjust to his passing, and so they have now gone back to the family. The family is delighted and very honored to have that happen, and I think the sense of the board was that we'd like to have that happen as well. Rick was a good friend to me, and he was a rare individual because he combined a very mature judgment with an extremely youthful spirit. He's a guy who sort of remained forever young in his own way. He was a lot of fun to be with, and we had plans to meet for a martini, but COVID intervened beforehand. And I just wanted to mention one other thing that I saw that was of some interest. I thought it might be of interest to David, and that is, I was reading the governor's announcements on COVID, and he mentioned that he is studying with the scientists air conditioning and air handling to come up with recommendations to make air conditioning and air handling systems safer, as they're now pretty sure that they're involved in the spread of COVID. And David, I'm pretty sure you'll agree with me that we ought to keep track of the governor's recommendations, because you and I actually discussed that very issue about a month ago when the town was considering putting up the plexiglass, and corresponded with you about, that the air handling was an issue, and we talked about it very briefly. So now it seems that they're sure that air conditioning and air handling are issues of immediate importance, as they recognize that COVID is spread through the air. So I'm looking forward to hearing from the governor and more from the governor on this. It's another example of him. One thing he's done really well is followed the science. I'm glad to hear about this.
Yeah, on the issue of HVAC systems, there is, evidence from some of the studies that have been done to date that infections particularly within some interior spaces where there was vents blowing air across the COVID positive person did directly aid in the infection of others that were, quote, downwind of them. And whether or not, the disease can be spread and sustain itself within ductwork or after filtration is still being investigated. Obviously we're all learning every day as we move forward with this pandemic. There have been a number of developments and discoveries and understandings that have been made, and we'll continue to monitor those as the guidance comes out. As to the best practices will certainly be evolving. We can only do what we can do based on the best available knowledge at the time, and if we need to make further adjustments to our own in-house operations, or to advise others as how to best protect themselves and others, will certainly be monitoring that. But I did also, get that news report from the governor, so we look forward to find out what those findings actually involve. Do you have anything else to add, Jeff, on your liaison?
That's really about it. Thank you.
I have a question for Jeff. I got an email I've emailed you back and the town board back that I found upsetting about AMAC, and that AMAC is, working or directing somebody else to do work for them. And I'm not apprised of any of work we've asked them for or they've advised us that they need. So I don't know what AMAC is actually off doing, and that it's now becoming someone else involved with AMAC that's not been put on the committee at all. So can you explain what's going on?
Yeah, that's really not accurate. AMAC formed there was, at the last AMAC meeting, and actually at a couple of other meetings that we've had, there have been discussions about what aircraft are causing noise that are in the airspace. And some of the discussion has been that there are aircraft that transit through our airspace that are not using HTO. And there was some interest in finding out, like, to what extent noise complaints were related to aircraft that were not using HTO, if that were possible. So a couple of people on AMAC volunteered to be a subcommittee and try to take a look at noise complaints and then cross-reference them with tracking aircraft, see if some of the noise complaints that are happening are related to aircraft that aren't, involved in using HTO. So that was their assignment. It sounds a little difficult to do, frankly, and it was in the context of undertaking that work that some noise complaints were given to these two members to compare with tracking that they could find. And one of the persons that made the noise complaint was upset because the noise complaint had her name attached to it. And so I contacted Jim Brundage about it as soon as I heard about it, and we discussed it. We've actually discussed it a couple of times. First, I have to say, like, what's going on? Why is someone's identity being given to somebody on AMAC? And he explained that when you hand in the noise complaints, you really can't sort out the person's name. I don't have the technical information, the technical know-how to fully explain. He said it would be very difficult to make them honest, but I can go back to him, or I can come back to see if that's possible. I contacted the person who complained actually twice, explaining what was going on, that no one was sharing private information to try to identify who was making complaints. We just
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jeff, but we're having trouble with your audio. Is everybody else experiencing that with Jeff's audio?
Listen up, Jeff.
Really? Okay.
I don't know where you heard what you heard up to. Is this better? Can you hear me?
Yeah, the volume's kind of low, but we can hear you. You're not breaking up.
Yeah, maybe your earphones. Nope.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. No.
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 Try to speak up here. Can you hear me now? Without?
Yeah, if you just try and get close to the mic.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty low.
What I explained was that no one was grabbing personal information to share personal information. They were just circulating some complaints in order to see if the complaint attached to an aircraft that was using HTO or just flying through the airspace. That's what it was all about. So that person who complained now knows about that, should know about it, because I resent the email, twice to her. And I can talk to Jim. I was talking to Jim before the meeting began to see if there's any more that he can enlighten us on, and I'm happy to share it. His thoughts on it. Maybe there is a way to eliminate any kind of personal identification.
Yeah. You have to just contact Robert Brotel at Plain Noise, and he can generate the report and have the personal information scrubbed from it, so they get the gist of the complaint. They just don't know who the complainant is and where they live.
Okay.
And their phone number.
This is I don't know. I think it's a pretty serious breach in the fact that you have an organization that saved the airport that's now apparently having access to those who are issuing complaints. And it was kind of disturbing to get the email that was forwarded to me today that talked about AMAC engaging an outside person working for a commercial company to do work and tasks on behalf of AMAC. And AMAC is Airport Management Advisory Committee, and it's an advisory committee. And I don't know why they're not having better communication with the town board, because that's the only entity that they're really supposed to be communicating to in terms of taking actions or offering advice. And there seems to be a real disconnect. And I'm really concerned that personal information is being circulated and made available to those who have taken a specific position on the airport, which is contrary to the person making complaints.
It's not a third. I'm not sure.
You're going to have to speak closer to your microphone, Jeff. We can't hear you.
I'm not sure I understand what you're talking about as a third party that AMAC went to. These were two members of AMAC.
No, this is I sent it to you this morning where a woman says, I was asked to assist AMAC.
She works for Steve Tuma. And Steve Tuma is Steve Tuma is a member of AMAC.
Yes.
I understand that Steve Tuma is a member, but somebody else should not be doing the work if Steve is going to be doing it. It's really getting other people involved in AMAC, and we're not even apprised of it. We should at least know what's going on.
I didn't know that either. The person that I knew of was Steve Tuma, who's a member of AMAC. So let me circle back to Jim, and we'll straighten it out. This involved one complaint. That's what this involved. One complaint.
Well, that's what started it, yes. But I think there's more going on beneath that surface, and I don't know we don't have any communication with AMAC. Evidently, they're doing their own thing, and that's not.
No, they're not doing their own thing. I report on what AMAC's doing. This did not seem like, anything out of line with what their mission is. They wanted to determine if it was possible to determine if some noise complaints did not involve HTO aircraft. I think that's a reasonable task to try to find out.
What is the goal of gaining that information? I mean, they have a specific objective.
Ask for that information. We need to ask for the information. They're going off and just finding information, and with the group associated with saving the airport at all costs. So how could we decide whether or not that's accurate information? Even if it was presented, and if it's presented,
are they working on behalf of the town board or not? Are they on their own entity? Because it seems to me like they've kind of stepped beyond being, an advisory, committee. They kind of are off on their own, doing their own thing here.
No, I disagree with that. I don't think this is much different from them, sending in a report on what they thought the town should investigate on an economic study of the airport. They've tried to dive into some of the technical issues. They, sometimes think that because they come up with an idea, that's what should happen. And they're routinely advised that, we'll send it to the town board and we'll see what you think about it.
Well, they didn't send this to the town board, and yet
it's not done.
But they're doing something. Okay.
Well, I guess we'll have to take this up again, but
well, I can bring Jim Brundage.
For the sake of time, I'd like to try and keep the meeting moving.
Yeah, and Jim Brundage is the airport manager. He's a member of AMAC as an ex officio. He shouldn't be spending time working for AMAC unless he wants us to okay that time.
Yeah, I don't think that's what's going on, but we can talk to Jim Brundage directly. I talked to Jim before today's meeting, but he didn't have a laptop with him. So.
Okay, well, moving on. Do you have anything else to report, Jeff?
No, that's all.
Okay, as I said at the beginning of the meeting, the region is preparing for phase 4 reopening under the governor's guidelines.
I put that in, but do you want my liaison report?
Oh, I'm sorry. Skipped you.
I know.
Don't I normally go to you before Jeff? I do, right?
You do.
And that's why I was thinking. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. Just quickly, a subcommittee of the East Hampton Sustainability Committee met, and they're trying to put together a webinar that is going to answer a lot of questions about CCA.
Oh, good.
I know that was one of the things that Kathy was talking about with her group. They would really like to see CCA moved along as quickly as possible, and not knowing how much longer we're still going to be in lockdown and not having public hearings with people actually in the same room. They would like to answer as many questions as they can, educate the community, and if we're still in lockdown, go ahead and have a second public hearing before we even get to having, because this could be past fall, we don't know how long this is going to happen. So this CCA is a community benefit, and I think that we're depriving the community of not having this community benefit, at least discussing it, unless we get this moved along. They're also reviewing the web pages for Energize East Hampton. As you may or may not know, Peak Savers is no longer available. That program has sunsetted, but there are still rebates to be had if you're looking for Nest thermostats and you're looking for pool pump rebates. Those are still available, so they're updating that website so that so if you go to Energize East Hampton, it's not been updated yet, and very soon it will be within the next couple of days, and you can see what is available. I'm going to just move on to the Community Housing Opportunity Fund met, and really what they're doing is reviewing what we had already heard from the planning department on affordable housing overlays, the 3 properties that we're looking at. One is over off of off of 3 Mile Harbor, no, off of Springs Place Road. Let me get it right.
3 Mile.
Yeah, and the 2 that we have purchased on the 114. So I want to thank Eric Shantz for, walking through all the different properties. They're, showing us on the map where they are and some of the memos and going through it with the CHOF committee. They're very anxious for us to move all of those to public hearing so that we can now perhaps listen to the public on having affordable housing overlays on those 3 different sites that we were talking about. The Montauk CAC met, and, I have to say it was a really, really good meeting. We had over 30 people on the Zoom meeting. And so we started out by saying what went wrong over the 4th of July weekend, and there was only one complaint actually of what went wrong, and it was, Ditch Plains had a lot of people on it at night during the fireworks. The sun went down, people shooting off fireworks off Ditch Plains, not social distancing, not having masks. Other than that, there was a lot of compliments to everyone in Montauk working towards complying, social distancing, wearing masks when they could. There were 3 on the meeting with 3 hotel owners. One hotel owner said it was the best July 4th in a long time, and that was because it was families, and that everyone complied, and that we're very anxious and very grateful to be at a hotel during the holiday and, out of their, the lockdown that we've been in for so many months. Another hotel owner of a large motel said that he also had more families than normal. There were a few people that were what he called rowdy, but they had enough security there that problem was squelched pretty quickly. And then another hotel owner said that he had more families, but that was 99% were compliant, and he was very pleased with the weekend. A few of the people were very grateful to get that, and I said it earlier, getting the information in the press release, and they were grateful that the town was already, moving forward, and a lot of the sentiment was quote, come down hard on the people that did not comply. And part of the reason is there's been a lot of kind of self-policing among the businesses out there, particularly in Montauk, and a lot of conversation between the business owners because they are fearful that this disease may come back and this would shut them down again. So those that aren't self-policing and those that are flaunting the law and not doing the right thing are making all of them look bad. And they feel very concerned and upset about that, especially when everyone has been working very hard, or the majority has been working very hard to be compliant. So, and this was from this comment about coming down hard was from not a business owner. This was from someone who says, I see what the business owners are going through and that they are working very hard. We did have a guest that was a captain for the fire department in Montauk and was very concerned about what's going on East Lake. The cars were very hard to get through because of that one particular business. And there was an emergency on that road, and they had a very tough time getting through. And the other issue, and I mentioned it earlier, was, that now share houses are becoming a little bit of a problem in Montauk, and we need to start looking at share houses and the number of folks that are there. So, all in all, it was a really good meeting. I think, communication between the town and folks in general, but at least the people then on the Montauk CAC were very pleased and appreciate, getting information as quickly as possible. So I was appreciative because it made our conversation much more informative, much better for us to have a conversation and not just somebody telling them information because they already had the information. And that's really all I have. So that's it. So,
thank you, Sylvia. I'll just tack on, since you left off with Montauk and the Montauk CAC. We were around in 2015 when 4th of July was so busy in Montauk that things kind of got out of hand, and the community came out to the firehouse. I think 500 people showed up at the firehouse for our town board meeting on the 6th of July, which is the Tuesday right after that weekend. And, we got an earful that the community just didn't want that to be happening. And we've had a concerted effort to try and, maintain civil and respectful, kind of summers in Montauk. And it's been somewhat challenging, and there's always been a few businesses that are outliers that push the envelope in any given year. And I think, this year it's so much more poignant given the fact that we're coming out of the worst stage of the worldwide pandemic, which, New York was the epicenter, and Long Island was certainly a very affected area. And to your point, we've made such strides due to personal sacrifices of our community members in order to get us to this stage that it would be a real shame to have folks come in and kind of blow it for us. So I think, that sentiment is pretty wide throughout the community, and we're going to continue to bring whatever resources are necessary in order to try and ensure that everybody has the best possible summer under what are clearly challenging circumstances. We heard from the chief earlier today. I'm constantly in contact with the chief, and we're discussing whether it was just protecting the public health initially or, dealing with some of the other emerging problems now. This is going to continue to be a work in progress, but I know that the community supports those efforts, so we're going to continue with them. Phase 4 reopening begins on Wednesday. That's tomorrow. That will include the resumption of low-risk indoor and outdoor arts and entertainment. Indoor arts and entertainment will be limited to 25% of the maximum occupancy, and that's inclusive of patrons and visitors. Basic protocols will have to be maintained, which are, wearing masks while inside. If you're visiting a museum or an exhibit of some kind, and social distancing needs to be practiced. In addition to that, sports, professional sports that would include, which would not include, rather, fans being present can resume. Also, media production is being allowed to resume with no more than 50% occupancy in the particular area, again, with the same sort of mask wearing and face coverings. So we're probably, going to have some more requests about potential film shoots or whatnot. Again, I think we'll be at a point where we'll have to revisit some of our previous positions due to improvement and to start relaxing some more of the the regulations that we put in place that may not be as relevant as we move forward. Hopefully that will be the case. We'll be able to relax things even more. Again, it's going to require everybody's help in doing so. As much as people talk about mandates and enforcing the laws, it really comes down to personal responsibility in the end. And we need people to take some personal responsibility. And we'll remind them of that necessity from time to time as needed. We have the SCALP 10-year review is continuing to move forward. For those who don't know what that acronym stands for, it's the Suffolk County Aquaculture Lease Program. The county has operated a lease program for about 10 years, hence the 10-year review. This is the year where that program gets reviewed. I know the trustees have been fully engaged in these discussions, and on behalf of the town, we've had John Barley Dunn, who's our director of aquaculture, and John Aldridge, both involved on behalf of the town. But I would like to bring up the discussion at a town board work session so that we can review, some of the proposals. I know that the trustees have, again, taken the lead on this and have had numerous meetings and discussions and have reached, I think, some compromises with various stakeholders. I think we should review what's been done to date and weigh in as town board on that issue. I'm somewhat inclined to, having reviewed what the trustees have done to date, to agree with their approach and their recommendations, but I think the board should take the matter up to discuss and see if we can come to a consensus on a position, whether to support the trustee position or support it with some caveats of our own. There's been, to the previous board members, discussions of fiber optics. Jeff brought it up in light of LTV and communications there. Kathy brought it up as to developments throughout the town. We've seen the trucks all over town stringing wire. I've met with the CEO of Altice to talk about communications and that project over Zoom call, and just to be more informed about what's planned. I think Kathy pretty much summarized it in saying that the entire footprint of Altice within the town is being upgraded to fiber optic cable, with fiber being available directly to homes. Fiber optics are a superior way of bringing signal to someone's home. Previously, Fios, which is a Verizon company, was the only fiber optic company pretty much out there. And because there was no interest of making those types of investments in the local area, and because we have a franchise agreement with Cablevision, formerly Cablevision, now Altice, which will be expiring, I believe, in 2 years from now, they've committed to expanding and improving the network. Clearly here, in a normal summer, we do see drops in internet speeds and having communications problems. Many of those problems will be resolved with the new fiber optic. But I also think that we need to continue moving forward with enhancing our cellular communications, and we need to take a comprehensive approach to that rather than having just a piecemeal approach where providers come and ask for locations here and there throughout the town. It ends up giving us a really patchwork system, with multiple providers. Some areas are better served than others by certain providers. I think with the demands of today's society and the necessity by many to have their emergency communications, they've given up landlines. They rely on cell phones to call in for an ambulance or fire department or whatever it might be, that we need to continue moving forward with improving the system. I'd also like to have perhaps at the next work session an update on the progress of the emergency communications system throughout the town. That's been moving forward. It's only been delayed slightly due to COVID. There were some delays regarding getting equipment or the fact that certain work couldn't be done while socially distancing. Since that's eased up somewhat, that progress is again resumed and being made. So I'll have an update on that as well. And I think that's pretty much it for now. Again, I encourage everyone to continue wearing your masks when in public and following the guidance and guidelines and being safe. Be respectful of your neighbors, and we'll get through this and have the best possible summer we can if we adhere to those basic guidelines, I think. So I'll entertain a motion to go into exec session.
We have
two resolutions.
Oh, we have one resolution. I'm sorry.
We'll actually have three because I've got two.
You have some walk-ons?
So there's.
Yep, sorry.
David, you had one.
Yes,
Okay.
I have resolution 2020-691 to offer us to appoint seasonal lifeguard Dean Hauser, hourly rate of $15.50 to be paid bi-weekly effective July 6, 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
So I have resolution ID number 23044. This was the payment to Silver Wolf Environmental Inc. It was confusing, and on Thursday we had put two of these together with two different companies. So this is the one for just payment to Silver Wolf. And the total bill for Silver Wolf is $5,821.35. And we are moving money from $5,258 from one of the community housing budget lines to another community housing budget line for outside professionals.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried.
And the second one is the one that we heard earlier today from Tom Rule, and it's ID number 23046. It's about the CARES Act and a public notice so we can get public comment. This is for the community block grant, and we received money, approximately $15,693 in federal community block grant funds. The funds must be used to meet a COVID-19 related need, having particular urgency. The town money would be meals through the Senior Center Nutrition Program at $10,693, and administrative support for the Consortium for Rental Assistance, which is $5,000. And Tom gave us an overview of that earlier today.
Second.
Discussion?
Yep.
I just have one question, Sylvia, because so it's just that they have to have public comment into us by the date, and the date he put in is July 16th at 3 p.m. But our meeting is on July 16th at 11 a.m. So people could be getting public comment in, well, after we've met. Am I reading that properly? That's my only, that just didn't make sense to me.
We need to keep the public comment available for 5 days. So from now between the July 16th would be more than 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, we're going to notice it on July the 16th. We're noticing the public comment for July the 16th.
Don't we still have the same COVID extension until we file our transcripts?
It's not a hearing, though, is it?
Not a hearing.
No, it's
just to receive comment.
It's public comment, which is a different animal. And you're right, Kathy, that we can receive with this resolution, we can start receiving those comments and receive them up to July 16th at 3 p.m.
But we are going to vote on this on July 16th at 11 a.m.?
Well, so we might want to change that date. John, do you want to weigh in on this? Should we do it till 11 a.m.
That's fine.
on July 16th?
Yeah, you should have it end before the meeting starts if you're going to vote on it, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. So 11 a.m. is fine.
11
Is that going to be all right with you, Carol? I mean, would you still be seeing things coming in right up until the meeting on your now? So maybe we should end at the.
Carol, you're muted.
Tom Rule just called me. He said the 15th is fine. Just make it end the 15th.
Okay, so make it
Okay, July 15th. At
July
3
15th
p.m.
at 3 p.m.
Beautiful.
So a second is amended. Anybody?
Second is amended.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried.
So now a motion to go into executive session, although I don't know what's on the
Personnel, contracts, and acquisition.
personnel contracts and acquisitions. It is now 2:15.
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock.
Beautiful.
And Peter, are you going to send a Zoom link?
I'll send a Zoom link for the exec.
Okay, thank you. We'll meet.
You, everyone. Stay safe.
Second.
Well,
Second, all in favor?
I second. Aye.
all in favor?
Aye.
See you at 3 o'clock.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.